Chapter 1194. One had to know that Gyuuena was pregnant with his child. This was his only bloodline, so he attached great importance to it. Knowing that there were so many first-level gods present, the protection he left behind naturally couldn't be weak. Chihiro Snow was only protecting her on the surface to attract attention and lower the vigilance of those gods. The real protection was the four spirits that had always been with him. When he was healing Gyuuena and hugging her, he had already quietly hidden the four spirits beside her. With his control of space, it was easy for him not to be discovered by those gods. What he had said and how he insisted on holding Gyuuena in his arms to fight were all just to confuse the gods. Later, when Chihiro Snow came, he changed his plan and conveniently let Chihiro Snow protect her on the surface while the four spirits secretly protected her. This way, it became more secure. The result was as Lu Yuan expected. The water god and the fire god were killed as soon as they made a move. This arrangement was really wonderful. Lu Yuan wasn't a barbarian who only knew how to fight. His mind was also very flexible. Sometimes, wisdom was also an extremely powerful force. With the deterrence of the attack just now, the help of the four spirits, and Chihiro Snow with a sword at the side, he believed that Gyuuena was now as stable as Mount Tai. No god would dare to have any ideas about her. Gyuuena's safety was no longer threatened, so he could naturally fight with more ease. The Dragon Emperor Draining Spring Spear directly pierced into the body of the God of Light, and her life force quickly dissipated. The God of Light stared fiercely at Lu Yuan, her eyes full of resentment. "Don't blame me. You asked for it. I don't like to kill people, but you insisted on courting death. It has nothing to do with me." Facing the God of Light's resentful gaze, Lu Yuan's eyes were indifferent, and there wasn't the slightest ripple in his heart. Although the God of Light was a woman, and a very beautiful one at that, since she attacked Gyuuena, then Lu Yuan wouldn't hesitate to kill her without any mercy. "I curse you. You will not have a good ending. You will die miserably." The God of Light's beautiful face was full of ferocity as she spat out a vicious curse. "Even if I die a horrible death, you won't be able to see it." Lu Yuan lightly shook, and the Dragon Emperor Draining Spring Spear directly disintegrated the Light God's body. Lu Yuan took a godhead, and the Light God's divine power poured into the mainland. After that, he brandished the Dragon Emperor Draining Spring Spear and continued his massacre. One by one, the godly spirits fell at his hands. He killed until blood splattered everywhere. Heaven and earth lost their color. Shura deity and the others were so angry that their eyes were about to split open. Their eyes surged with a blood-red color. On the contrary, Di Tian and the others in the outside world felt their blood boiling. Gyuuena's eyes were filled with tears, and her face was filled with gratification and happiness. Lu Yuan shattered the God of Wrath with a single spear and took his godhead. His indifferent gaze swept across the four people in front of him. They were the only four remaining gods. They were the Sea God, Ice God, Wind God, and Space God. The first two were merciful because Lu Yuan had shown mercy. The last two were fast and had powerful life-saving methods. Otherwise, they wouldn't have escaped the fate of death. However, although the four of them were still alive, they were all seriously injured. Lu Yuan's attack was not to be underestimated. Even a god king would find it hard to resist, let alone a few first-tier gods. Even if the sea god was said to be comparable to a god king, it was useless. If one wasn't a god king, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to survive under Lu Yuan's spear. Those first-tier gods that died before were the best proof. "Sea god, do you still want to continue fighting? On account of our previous friendship, I will advise you again. Quickly retreat. I don't want to kill you." Lu Yuan pointed his spear horizontally and said indifferently. He wasn't someone who didn't care about old friendships. The sea god didn't attack Gyuuena and gave him the right to use the 13 halberds of the sea god and the light of the sea god. He really didn't want to kill the sea god. Besides, even without these, he would have spared the sea god's life for the sake of Pasisi. After all, he didn't want to see the Pasisi sad. She had worshipped the sea god all her life. If she suddenly heard that the sea god was dead, it would be hard for her to accept. This was the woman he had reserved. He loved her in his heart and didn't want to see her cry. Therefore, he was willing to advise the sea god again. Otherwise, with his personality, he would never be long-winded a second time. Thank you for your kindness. Sorry, I am a part of the god realm. I can't leave the god realm. The sea god shook her head and rejected Lu Yuan's suggestion once again. What about you? You are a rare heroine. As long as you are willing to retreat, I can let you go. Lu Yuan looked at the ice god. A female god who had comprehended the spear god realm was too rare. He didn't want to kill such an existence. Thank you, but I don't need it. I can die, but I won't abandon the god realm. The ice god clenched the ice god spear in her hand. Her voice was as firm as iron. You two are really stubborn. Forget it, I won't be merciful from now on. You two are on your own now. Good luck. Lu Yuan said softly. The Dragon Emperor draining spring spear in his hand disappeared. A pitch-black spear that flickered with blood-red light appeared. In an instant, an endless baleful aura filled the entire world. When this spear appeared, many divine weapons buzzed and emitted a sense of fear. The ice god's spear in the ice god's hand trembled violently. It actually broke free from the ice god's control and worshipped the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear, the supreme spear among spears. It was the strongest spear among all the spears. Facing the god-slaying spear, all spear-type weapons would submit completely. Although Lu Yuan's god-slaying spear was only a martial soul, this was only the Douluo continent. The ice god spear was only a supra-divine weapon. Seeing the ice god spear's actions, the ice god's expression changed drastically. The ice god spear that she was so proud of actually worshipped Lu Yuan's god-slaying spear. It completely submitted to it and didn't even listen to her orders. This was the first time such an action had happened in so many years. The ice god spear automatically worshipped. The sea god's trident wasn't much better. It trembled violently. Even the sea god felt that it was a little unstable. It seems like your supra-divine weapons want to betray me. That's great. It would be impolite for me to refuse. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. He stretched out his hand and the sea god's trident trembled even more violently. It actually broke free from the sea god's control and landed in Lu Yuan's hand. Lu Yuan casually gestured twice. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile. The sea god's trident. It's a pretty good weapon. I'll take it first. Lu Yuan patted it gently. The sea god's trident turned into a streak of golden light and entered Lu Yuan's body. The sea god was dumbfounded. She was in disbelief. Chapter 1195. The sea god's mouth was wide open in shock. The sea god's trident was his weapon, but not only did it not resist Lu Yuan, but it was also subdued by Lu Yuan. How was this possible? This was a supra-divine weapon, and it was a supra-divine weapon that he had personally nurtured. How could it be taken by Lu Yuan just like that? The ice god was also shocked. She quickly grabbed the ice god's spear and forcefully used her divine power to suppress the vibration of the ice god's spear. She was afraid that her weapon would be taken away by Lu Yuan. Seeing the ice god's actions, Lu Yuan was dumbfounded. It seemed that the ice god was shocked by him subduing the sea god's trident. However, the sea god's trident and the ice god's spear were completely different. The ice god's spear was only a tribute to the god-killing spear, but the sea god's trident had truly become his weapon. You seem very surprised. Lu Yuan smiled faintly and glanced at the sea god as he spoke softly. How did you do it? The sea goddess asked softly as she took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. He stared at Lu Yuan. He really wanted to know about this matter. He could feel that the sea god's trident was originally vibrating out of fear. However, the moment Lu Yuan waved his hand, he felt that the connection between him and the sea god's trident was slowly weakening until it completely disappeared. In other words, the sea god's trident really had nothing to do with him. His supra-divine weapon had completely betrayed him and became Lu Yuan's. Therefore, he was very concerned. He wanted to know what was going on. It seems that you really want to know. All right, since we are friends, I will reluctantly tell you. I have an ability, and that is, anything I touch will belong to me from the moment I touch it. For example, this. Lu Yuan's left hand flashed, and the blood-red Shura sacred sword appeared, exuding a terrifying and pure murderous aura. The Shura sacred sword is now mine. How is it? The Shura god couldn't summon it away, right? Lu Yuan smiled faintly. The Shura god's face immediately darkened. He was afraid that he would not be able to get away with this embarrassing matter. Seeing the Shura god's darkened face, Lucifer couldn't help but laugh. The Shura god was so embarrassed. This kid was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. Impossible. You may have touched the Shura sacred sword, but you have never used the sea god's trident. How can you control it? The sea god fiercely retorted. He felt that he had discovered a loophole. Have you forgotten about the sea god's heart? I've spent a long time on this, Lu Yuan said softly. God's sword. Poseidon was stunned. Lu Yuan had never touched Poseidon's trident before, but he had touched Poseidon's heart, which was the core of Poseidon's trident. He could control the sea god's trident through the sea god's heart. Impressive. You've been scheming for the sea god's trident since the beginning, right? Pasisi's invitation to the sea god's island was exactly what you wanted. The sea god sighed. Hihi, it's a supra-divine tool. Who wouldn't want it? Besides, I was going to leave it for my own people. I guess you waited for Zhu Qing to pass the 7th test before forcefully summoning Poseidon's trident. Perhaps she's still in a daze. Since she passed the 7th test, Poseidon's trident is hers. I have to return it to her. Lu Yuan said warmly. The sea god rolled his eyes. The sea god's trident is mine. I haven't said I'm going to give it to her. Hihi, it's mine now that it's in my hands. I can give it to whoever I want. Besides, aren't you going to retire? What do you want it for? Lu Yuan smiled faintly. The sea god, you're really shameless. The sea god couldn't help but scold him. No, I'm not being shameless. I snatched it with my own abilities. Lu Yuan kept his Azura holy sword and retracted his teasing expression. The god-slaying spear exuded a cold killing intent. The blood gold, earth gold, and bright gold soul rings circled around it and shone brightly. This spear is called the god-slaying spear. What do you think? It's not bad, right? Lu Yuan asked. His voice was cold. The ice god's eyes became alert. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the ice god's spear. She asked, "What do you want?" As she asked, she stared at the god-slaying spear in Lu Yuan's hand. This spear was too ferocious. She felt like she was going to die just by looking at it. That terrifying murderous aura and fiendish aura made her heart tremble involuntarily. She was famous for being fearless. Are you afraid? Lu Yuan smiled and asked. I'm not. The ice god shook her head and denied it. She was the ice god. She wasn't afraid. Ha ha, stubborn. Lu Yuan smiled and caressed the god-slaying spear gently. He continued, this spear is so good, but it only has 3 soul rings. It's a pity. He picked up the god-slaying spear gently and said, what I want to do now is to fill up my soul rings. I'm thinking that since godly beasts and soul beasts can produce soul rings, gods should be able to too. After he finished speaking, Lu Yuan's eyes turned sharp. The god-slaying spear in his hand locked onto the wind god. Lu Yuan moved and stabbed the god-slaying spear. Lu Yuan, stop. The sea god was shocked and pounced forward. Without the sea god's trident, the sea god's strength was greatly reduced. She was kicked away by Lu Yuan. The ice god pursed her lips and suppressed the fear in her heart. She stabbed her spear at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan held the ice god spear with his left hand, and the power of rules spread quickly. Thank you for giving me equipment so eagerly. Let go. Lu Yuan shook his left hand. The ice god's hands went numb, and the ice god spear fell out of her hands. Lu Yuan swung the ice god spear gently. The handle of the ice god spear swept across the ice god's body and sent her flying. Although Lu Yuan held back some strength, the ice god was definitely injured. She wouldn't be able to participate in the battle anymore. Die. Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear and stabbed it down. No. The wind god let out a mournful wail and turned into ashes under the god-slaying spear. After being locked onto by the god-slaying spear, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't escape. It's your turn. Lu Yuan quickly turned around. The god-slaying spear left his hand and hit the space god who was escaping, ending his life. Lu Yuan reached out and the god-slaying spear flew into his hand. He also kept the two godheads. Power of rules, condense for me. White light flickered. The power of the space god and the wind god surged and condensed on the god-slaying spear. They turned into two silver gold and green gold soul rings. In this way, the god-slaying spear was hung with 5 soul rings. The next 4 empty spots are left for you. Lu Yuan's aura surged. The murderous intent of the god-slaying spear engulfed the few god kings. His clear but cold voice resonated in the sky. Chapter 1196. Killing a god as a ring was something that had never been done before. Lu Yuan's actions had completely stunned everyone. How could Ibuchi do that? Chihiro Snow covered his mouth, his golden eyes full of shock. Killing a god was fine, but using a god as a soul ring was not good, right? What's wrong with him? Did he do something wrong? Jiyu Yuena asked softly, her purple eyes filled with joy. She was very satisfied with Lu Yuan's actions, from the bottom of her heart. Actually, it's not a big deal. He just killed a god as a soul ring. Bibidon was rather calm. Anyway, he was going to kill a god, so using it as a soul ring was just recycling trash. It's not a big deal. Don't you think this goes against the natural order? This is not the right way, Chihiro Snow retorted. How is it not the right way? Can you only kill soul beasts as soul rings? Can't you kill a god as a soul ring? Only the officials are allowed to set fires, but the common people are not allowed to light lamps. Jiyu Yuena's beautiful eyes turned cold as she looked at Chihiro Snow. That's not what I meant. Alright, stop arguing. Ibuchi has his reasons for doing this. Don't you know what kind of person he is? Does he look like someone who walks the wrong way? He's only doing this to help Jiyu Yuena and the soul beasts vent their anger. Cher, you have to understand him. Bibi Dong blinked her pink eyes. She had seen through it all. Gathering the soul rings was only one aspect of it. What Lu Yuan wanted was to vent the anger in his heart. Someone had to pay for Jiyu Yuena's suffering, and someone had to pay for the many soul beasts that died because of the abnormal cultivation rules. Who was the one behind the cultivation rules of killing soul beasts to obtain soul rings? It was the gods of the god realm, the 5 godly kings of the god realm. Since they did these things, they had to pay the price. After all, everyone had to be responsible for their own actions. As one of the rulers of soul beasts, Lu Yuan had the golden dragon's bloodline flowing through his veins. He had to shoulder his responsibilities, and everything he was doing now was his responsibility. He was fulfilling his responsibility as a husband, and also as a leader of the soul beasts. It was precisely because Bibidon could see this that she understood Lu Yuan very well and supported him unwaveringly. I know. I was just worried that Ibuchi had gone astray. I didn't think so much. After hearing Bibidon's words, Chihiro Snow lowered her voice. After all, she wasn't a soul beast. Even though she wasn't a pure human, she was still used to looking at things from a human's point of view. She couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable when she saw the killer god's ring. This was human nature. Moreover, she was genuinely worried about Lu Yuan and was genuinely concerned about him. I know. Although you've matured a lot, you're still young and your thoughts aren't deep enough. I understand, but don't worry. Take it slow. You still have time. Bibidon patted Chihiro Snow's shoulder and said gently. Chihiro Snow nodded slightly, and her expression became much better. No wonder you're the main wife. Ibuchi's judgment is correct. Jiyu Yuena looked at Bibidon with admiration. From this moment on, she truly recognized Bibidon's identity as the main wife. Bibidon was mature, wise, and able to see the big picture. She could see the essence of things easily. Furthermore, she understood Lu Yuan very well. Jiyu Yuena asked herself if she could do better than Bibidon. As for Chihiro Snow, she was still lacking in experience. She still needed to learn. After all, Chihiro Snow was only 28 years old. For the Douluo continent, where cultivation was allowed, 28 years old was really too young. The age limit for the Continental Elite Soul Master Tournament was 25 years old. Chihiro Snow was intelligent, but her age limited her vision. Not everyone was like Lu Yuan, who had 2 lifetimes of experience. Thank you. I still have a lot of shortcomings, and I still need your help. Bibidon smiled gently and said softly, You're too modest. You've already done very well. Jiu Yuana said gently. The two of them chatted and laughed. Chihiro Snow opened her eyes wide and looked at them in confusion. Weren't they talking about Ibuchi? Why were they complimenting each other? However, their relationship seemed to be getting better and better. Was this Bibidon's ability? Chihiro Snow looked at Bibidon, and then at Lu Yuan. She had to admit that she wasn't as good as Bibidon when it came to building relationships with people. She could also treat people peacefully. For example, when she was pretending to be Xue Qinghe, she was famous for being polite to the wise. However, that was just an act. It was all to make use of people. She might not have liked those people in her heart. However, Bibidon could really get along with people as equals. This was something she couldn't compare to. In the end, it was the inexplicable arrogance of an angel that caused trouble. Sigh. Chihiro Snow sighed. It was still a little difficult for her to take the initiative to put down her arrogance and get along with others as equals. Forget it. I'm not the main wife anyway. Why should I care about this? There's nothing wrong with being arrogant. I'm arrogant. As long as Ibuchi likes me, it's fine. Chihiro Snow muttered. Her beautiful eyes looked at Lu Yuan, who was wearing 9-colored god armor and holding the god-killing spear. She was gradually mesmerized. It's your turn. Lu Yuan held the god-killing spear and walked toward the 5 divine kings. With every step he took, the murderous intent on his body became more intense. The terrifying murderous intent made the 5 divine kings frown. This murderous intent was too frightening. Even they felt a chill in their hearts. Lu Yuan's murderous intent engulfed the entire place. The huge pressure made the destruction god and Azura god stop at the same time. Now, the one they needed to deal with the most was not Lucifer, but Lu Yuan. The terrifying pressure that Lu Yuan brought to them was even greater than that of the dragon god. Although Lucifer was a big threat, compared to Lu Yuan, he was on a completely different level. Moreover, Lu Yuan had single-handedly killed 14 first-level gods, excluding the sea god and the ice god. Those 14 first-level gods were the subordinates of the Azura god and the destruction god. The two of them really hated Lu Yuan to the core. Especially when Lu Yuan used the god-killing spear at the end and directly announced that the last 4 empty spots were reserved for them. Who could tolerate this kind of provocation? Their anger had already reached an extreme. Today, even if they didn't talk about Lucifer, they still wanted to kill Lu Yuan completely. If this person didn't die, it would be difficult to resolve the hatred in their hearts. The evil and kind divine kings stood up at the same time. Their injuries were completely healed at this moment. In other words, Lu Yuan was going to face the 5 divine kings of the god realm at the same time. The 5 divine kings gathered together and a terrifying pressure swept toward Lu Yuan. Chapter 1197. With the 5 divine kings gathered together, the huge pressure coming from them seemed to have solidified. If that terrifying pressure was placed on a first-tier divine king, it would probably be enough to crush him to pieces. Jiu Yuana's expression also became serious. She looked in the direction of Lu Yuan, secretly worried for Lu Yuan. Once the 5 divine kings gathered together, the strength they could unleash when cooperating with each other would definitely not be a simple sum of 5. It would be at least 10, or even 20 or 30. Their strength would be greatly increased. If it were not for that, the dragon god would not have been defeated by them, given his strength back then. One had to know that the dragon god had gathered a terrifying physical body and controlled all elements. Its strength was definitely at the peak of the divine king realm. It was even half a step away from the divine king realm. It was also because of this that its 2 main clones, the Golden Dragon King and the Silver Dragon King, could reach the threshold of the Divine King realm. However, even so, the Dragon God was still defeated back then. It was because the 5 Divine Kings had a tacit understanding and could unleash a huge power. And now, it was Lu Yuan's turn to face all of this. Lu Yuan was naturally powerful, but Jiu Yuana was still somewhat worried about facing 5 Divine Kings at the same time. Damn it, if only I could fight now. Jiu Yuana clenched her fists and secretly cursed. If she could stop 2 Divine Kings, then Lu Yuan would be able to deal with the remaining 3 with ease. But now, she could only watch Lu Yuan fight. This feeling was really uncomfortable. Don't worry, Ibuchi will not lose. He is very confident. Bibidon gently patted Jiu Yuana's shoulder. Lu Yuan's eyes were firm and persistent. His body exuded an indescribable color of confidence. He would definitely not lose like this. Bibidon is right. It is impossible for Ibuchi to lose. You have not seen the power of Ibuchi's god-killing spear, have you? I have. It is so terrifying that it is unimaginable. Just now, when he killed the wind god and the space god, the power of the god-killing spear was not unleashed at all. Once the power of the god-killing spear is unleashed, Ibuchi's strength will increase exponentially. Even if the 5 great divine kings are extremely powerful, I still feel that the final victor will be Ibuchi. Chihiro Snow said softly. When Lu Yuan's aura was comparable to a god king, she already knew that it was impossible for Lu Yuan to lose. That was because the existence of the god-slaying spear was completely unreasonable. It was basically impossible for an existence of the same level to withstand the might of the god-slaying spear. Even if 5 divine kings attacked together, they similarly could not block it either. God-slaying spear? Jiu Yuana muttered softly. Looking at the god-slaying spear in Lu Yuan's hand that was emitting an endless amount of fiendish qi, she felt a lot more at ease. Lu Yuan still had the secret of Lin, the secret of being, the true dragon claw, and the god-slaying spear. It seemed that there was indeed no reason for him to lose. That's right, has Ibuchi completely comprehended the clear qi god seed? Jiu Yuana's eyes flashed as she suddenly asked. Although Lu Yuan was in the god realm now, he did not have a divine position. If he comprehended the clear qi god seed and fused with the clear qi god position, then he would have a 90% chance of winning. Then, he would not be able to lose even if he wanted to. He would be able to win easily just by casually playing around. Unlike now, although he was also very strong and had a similarly high chance of winning, there was always the risk of losing. After all, no one knew if the 5 divine kings had any trump cards or secret techniques. And thinking about it carefully, the possibility of this was not small. After all, the 5 divine kings had a long history. There might really be some things that were hidden. I don't know about this. Even you can't tell, so how can I tell? Chihiro Snow spread out his hands. Lu Yuan did not say anything. With his current strength, who could clearly see the depths of his strength? This is indeed not clear. Bibidon also shook his head. Lu Yuan, this guy, was always mysterious when doing things. If you were to just guess, it would be very difficult to guess. Is that so? Jiu Yuana muttered to herself. Her gaze once again looked towards Lu Yuan. At this time, Lu Yuan's aura had already burst forth, directly crushing the 5 divine kings' oppressive power head-on. Taking light steps, Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear upside down. Boundless killing intent radiated from his body, crazily surging towards the 5 divine kings. The evil divine king's expression changed slightly, and his pupils contracted slightly. The Lu Yuan in front of him seemed to be exceptionally difficult to deal with. He was even more difficult to deal with than the dragon god back then. Ha 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 ha, as expected, heroes come from the youth. What a strong aura. I, Lucifer, admire a young genius like you. Lucifer's figure moved, and he appeared not far away from Lu Yuan. He faced the 5 divine kings together with him. Sir, are you interested in joining forces with me to slaughter these hypocritical gods? Lucifer looked at Lu Yuan, and laughed loudly as he asked. Facing the 5 divine kings at the same time, even if Lucifer had 10 times the courage, he would not dare. However, if there was Lu Yuan, who could directly crush the aura of the 5 divine kings, then it would be different. As long as he shared the burden of one divine king, then with Lu Yuan's strength, he would most likely be able to easily deal with the remaining 4. This kind of operation was very promising. In this way, not only would he be able to preserve his life, but he would also be able to take revenge. This was really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, the most brilliant part was that he did not have any risks. He only needed to deal with 1 divine king. As soon as Lucifer said this, the expressions of the 5 divine kings changed at the same time. The life goddess opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she did not say anything in the end. Her impression of Lu Yuan and Lucifer was still different. Lucifer was a true demon, but Lu Yuan merely had a different standpoint. They were both mortal enemies. It was just that some enemies were admirable, and some enemies were detestable. She had watched Lu Yuan grow up. Even if they were enemies, she did not want to see this youth, who she had once thought highly of, wallow in the mire with Lucifer. However, this choice was very wise for the present Lu Yuan. Her standpoint also determined that she did not seem to have the qualifications to advise anything. As for the evil divine king and the others, their faces were purely black, because this would directly affect the outcome of this battle. The 5 divine kings complemented each other. When the 5 of them joined forces, their strength would increase greatly. If there were only 4 of them left, then the effect would definitely be greatly reduced. Even the dragon god might not be able to defeat the 4 of them together. Facing the present Lu Yuan, they would probably lose very badly. And the consequence of losing was death. Therefore, when they heard Lucifer's words, they could not help but feel a little flustered. However, Lu Yuan was ultimately Lu Yuan. He was ultimately different from ordinary people. He was arrogant, and he hated evil. This was especially so when he faced evil soul masters. His dual pupils blinked slightly, and he looked straight at Lucifer indifferently. Lu Yuan said coldly, "You seem a little familiar. I feel like I've seen this evil aura somewhere before." "Haha, you must be joking. This is the first time we've met." Lucifer chortled and said. Chapter 1198. Lucifer chuckled as his crimson eyes flickered. He wasn't lying. This was indeed his first time meeting Lu Yuan in his original form. "Is that so? Why do I feel like we've already met before? For example, in the Holy Ghost Church's secret realm." Lu Yuan said faintly with a hint of coldness in his tone. After hearing Lu Yuan's words, Lucifer knew that he couldn't hide it anymore. He smiled and said, "You do have a good memory. The one back then was actually my avatar. But come to think of it, I don't have any deep grudges with you. It can be said that we didn't get to know each other through a fight. Now that we have a common enemy, let's join forces to fight the enemy and kill these hypocritical gods. Wouldn't that be perfect?" Lucifer naturally remembered the enmity from before. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to find trouble with Lu Yuan and hurt Chihiro Snow as soon as he was born. However, Lu Yuan was so powerful now, and it wasn't wise to fight him. Lucifer was also someone who knew when to let go. Furthermore, he hated the god realm more than Lu Yuan, so he was willing to take the initiative to reconcile with Lu Yuan and join forces with him. It could be said that Lucifer was an ambitious and ruthless person, and he was also someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances. When he said these words, ordinary people naturally could not possibly object. After all, the 5 divine kings were indeed very strong, and there was no one who would not wish to have an additional helping hand. However, Lu Yuan just happened to be an exception. He hated evil soul masters the most, especially Lucifer, who was the driving force behind the evil soul masters. He wanted nothing more than to kill Lucifer, so there was no way he would team up with him. More importantly, he could sense Chihiro Snow's aura from Lucifer's body. Chihiro Snow's body also had some injuries that hadn't healed yet. Therefore, it was very obvious who had caused Chihiro Snow's injuries. Thinking about it carefully, Jiyu Yuena was clearly staying in the Dragon Valley with him. Why did she suddenly appear and attract the attention of the 5 godly kings? How did Chen Renshue and Bibi Dong know that Jiyu Yuena is in danger, so they rushed to rescue her? These thoughts flashed through Lu Yuan's mind as he quickly deduced what had happened. It was precisely because of Lucifer's appearance that he had injured Chihiro Snow. Chihiro Snow was no match for him, and Jiyu Yuena had stepped in to help him. After that, the 5 divine kings of the god realm had been summoned, and this had led to everything that he had seen after that. Perhaps, Lucifer was the one who should be blamed for this incident. Now, this guy still had the nerve to say that he wanted to join forces with him? Simply ridiculous. After going through everything in his mind, Lu Yuan's eyes were filled with coldness. He spoke softly, and his voice resounded through the sky. "Cher, were your injuries caused by this Lucifer?" Lu Yuan turned around slightly and looked at Chihiro Snow. He needed to confirm his guess. Yes. Chihiro Snow hesitated for a moment, but still said it. As soon as he said this, the murderous intent in Lu Yuan's eyes soared. Lucifer felt a chill run down his spine, and a chill rose in his heart. Jiyu Yuena glanced at Lucifer with disdain, then said, "This guy didn't just injure Chihiro Snow. He also wanted to make Chihiro Snow his woman." Chihiro Snow was almost forced to self-destruct. "What did you say?" Hearing this, Lu Yuan flew into a rage. The murderous intent in his heart suddenly rose, and it was so strong that it couldn't be added. He'd never imagined that Qian Renxue would actually almost lose her life under circumstances where he wasn't aware. "Lucifer, how dare you?" Lu Yuan was extremely angry. He directly ignored the 5 divine kings and stabbed the god-slaying spear at Lucifer. "Abuchi, don't." Chihiro Snow was shocked. Then, he looked at Jiyu Yuena with resentment and said, "Why did you say everything? Now that you said it, even Lucifer is going to change sides. Don't tell me you want Abuchi to fight 1 against 6. 1 against 5 is not much different from 1 against 6. Lucifer's combat strength didn't increase by much. The 5 divine kings are powerful because they are a whole. They complement each other, so they are very powerful when they work together. However, it is impossible for Lucifer to work together with them. If Abuchi could really fight 1 against 5, he wouldn't care about a mere Lucifer. After all, for Abuchi, numbers don't mean much to him in the same realm. If it wasn't for the 5 divine kings being a whole, and if it was an ordinary 5 divine kings working together, they wouldn't be able to fight against Abuchi at all. And if I don't say it, when he knows what happened to you in the future, even if he doesn't say it, he will blame me in his heart. Don't you know how much he loves you and cares about you? If he really works together with Lucifer, he will definitely regret it when he thinks about it in the future. Because he actually worked together with someone who covets his wife and almost killed his wife. With Abuchi's pride, how could he tolerate this kind of thing? So it's better to give him a chance now and let him vent. Moreover, don't you want Abuchi to help you get back at him for the grievances you suffered? Jiyu Yuena asked back. Of course I do. I'm just worried about Abuchi. As long as he is safe, it doesn't matter even if I suffer some grievances. Chihiro Snow shook his head and said. But Abuchi won't think that way. He won't let you suffer any grievances. He can't even bear to bully you, so he won't let others bully you. Bibidon shook his head and said. Hearing Jiyu Yuena and Bibidon's words, Chihiro Snow's beautiful golden eyes flickered. She couldn't help but look at Lu Yuan. At this moment, Lu Yuan was extremely angry. It seemed that his anger was even greater than when he saw Jiyu Yuena almost die not too long ago. Seeing Lu Yuan's angry appearance, Chihiro Snow's heart felt warm. Lu Yuan's love for her was still the same as before. She was still the reverse scale in Lu Yuan's heart that could never be touched. Lucifer, die. The god-killing spear flashed with a bloody light. When the spear shot out, the wind and clouds suddenly changed. The river of stars reversed. A terrifying killing intent directly locked onto Lucifer, making it impossible for him to dodge. You lunatic. Isn't she just a woman? Lucifer clenched his teeth and used all his strength to slash down with the fallen sacred sword. He really couldn't understand. In such a dangerous situation, Lu Yuan would actually attack his only helper. This was simply incomprehensible. What do you know? She is my life. Lu Yuan shouted angrily. The god-killing spear struck the fallen sacred sword. The unstoppable terrifying power directly sent the fallen sacred sword flying. Go to hell! Lu Yuan held the god-killing spear and stabbed it down. You can't kill me. I have an immortal body. Lucifer roared angrily. Black fog lingered around his body. Then let's see if I can kill you. Lu Yuan shouted. The god-killing spear pierced into Lucifer's body. Chapter 1199. Once the god-slaying spear entered his body, an endless baleful aura began to spread rapidly. Lucifer's life force was quickly swallowed up. At this moment, both his soul and his body received a double blow. Immortal body, why don't you use it? Lu Yuan laughed. The god-slaying spear shone with a bloody light. Lucifer's aura became more and more dispirited. All of his life force and vitality were gradually dissipating. My immortal body. Lucifer's face was filled with fear. After being pierced by the god-slaying spear, his immortal body had completely lost its effect. He could clearly feel his life force flowing away quickly. He was going to die. Death. Lucifer never thought that he would actually die one day. This feeling was truly frightening. I don't want to die. I'm not willing to accept this. Lucifer grabbed the god-slaying spear forcefully and let out a final wail. You talk too much. Lu Yuan shook the spear forcefully. The god-slaying spear shone brightly and Lucifer's body was instantly shattered. Lu Yuan stretched out his hand and two black crystals fell into his hand. One of them represented the fallen god king Lucifer, a god king rank godhead that contained the profound meaning of darkness and death. The other was a fallen angel crystal that was specially produced by fallen angels. After evolving, it would become a pure angel crystal. It could be used to help Chihiro Snow evolve his martial soul. Perhaps this was the opportunity for Chihiro Snow to become a 12-winged angel and enter the God King realm. Lu Yuan quickly kept the two crystals. The god-slaying spear shook and the terrifying divine power from Lucifer's body surged quickly. It condensed into a 9-colored soul ring on the god-slaying spear. Seeing this soul ring, Lu Yuan was slightly shocked. A 9-colored soul ring. Was this the color of a god king's soul ring? It had to be said that Lucifer was indeed worthy of being a god king. After his soul rings were in place, Lu Yuan's divine power rose sharply. If Lu Yuan's soul power was only at the peak of the divine official realm when he first arrived, then after absorbing the wind god, space god, and Lucifer's soul rings, Lu Yuan's divine power had reached the level of a first-tier god. Even if one were to take a plane, there was no way they could improve as quickly as Lu Yuan did. However, with Lu Yuan's foundation, his physique, and his spiritual power that was even more powerful than Jiyu Yuana's due to the awakening of his dual pupils, it was no problem for him to control this sudden increase in soul power. With the increase in his godly power, Lu Yuan's aura skyrocketed, surpassing the evil and kind godly kings, reaching an extremely high level. In addition to the god-slaying spear in his hand, the current Lu Yuan was a little frightening. Ding! The sharp long sword landed on Lu Yuan's godly armor, causing sparks to fly. Lu Yuan didn't care at all. The ambush's attack power was extremely high, but with the clear chi protective divine light around him and the 9-colored divine armor, his defense had reached a terrifying level. This kind of attack wasn't enough to break through his defenses. The growth of his divine power had also led to the strengthening of his physique. Lu Yuan's physique was as strong as ever. I knew it was you. Only a hypocrite like you would say one thing and do another. Now you've learned how to sneak up on me from behind. What a good law enforcer. But without a supradivine weapon, you don't even have the right to hurt me. Lu Yuan's body trembled as he threw the god-slaying spear. The handle struck Azura's body with terrifying force, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood and fly backward. Azura. The destruction god took 2 steps forward and caught Azura. Without being pierced by the spear, Azura's injuries weren't very serious. He still had the strength to fight. The figures of the 5 great divine kings swept over, directly enveloping Lu Yuan within. It's too late now if you didn't stop me. Lucifer is dead, but I've become stronger. You'd better surrender and I'll leave your corpses intact. Surrounded by the 5 divine kings, Lu Yuan didn't panic at all. His tone was calm and he was full of confidence. He wasn't afraid of the 5 divine kings. But now, he could completely beat them up. Bah, kid, don't talk nonsense. Even the dragon god was killed by us back then. You won't be an exception, the evil divine king said coldly. Heh, how can the dragon god compare to me? I can beat him up with one hand. As for you guys, you're just bones in the grave. Lu Yuan's tone was calm, but his tone was resolute. It made people believe that he was speaking the truth. An ant dares to say that he's higher than the sky. If we don't show you how powerful we are, you won't know how high the sky is. The destruction god sneered. He admitted that Lu Yuan was invincible in a one-on-one fight. No one in history was stronger than him. After all, Lu Yuan killed Lucifer with one move and injured Azura in an instant. This was the best proof. But once the 5 of them joined forces, it was completely different. No matter who their opponent was, the 5 of them were confident that they could kill him. Sigh, why do you have to go to this extent? The goddess of life sighed softly, and her eyes were full of pity. Lu Yuan was a true genius, but after today, he would no longer exist. Even she thought that the 5 divine kings would win. This was the confidence that had been cultivated through countless trials and tribulations over the years. At this point, it's purely because of our different standpoints. There's nothing to say, and no one can be blamed. Goddess, you're kind and I admire you. But they hurt my wife and children. No one in the world can save them. Lu Yuan nodded at the life goddess. Then his eyes focused and he stabbed the god-slaying spear in his hand toward Azura. Azura took 2 steps back. The evil divine king and the destruction god immediately followed. The divine sword of judgment and the divine halberd of destruction quickly slashed toward Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan blocked with his spear and repelled the 2 of them. The kind divine king gently shook the kind heart chain. Endless white light tore through the void and rushed toward Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan slammed down with his spear and scattered the white light into light spots. Suddenly, a strong wind came from behind. Lu Yuan dodged slightly. The life goddess's staff of life hit where Lu Yuan had been standing. Lu Yuan reacted quickly. He grabbed the air and kicked the life goddess in the stomach. The life goddess was shocked. Her life force burst forth and endless green light formed a light shield, blocking Lu Yuan's attack. The destruction god attacked again. The purple divine thunder of destruction shattered the void and struck toward Lu Yuan's head. Lu Yuan's spear was like a dragon. It pointed directly at the divine halberd of destruction. Endless divine power burst forth and the divine halberd of destruction flew backward. Lu Yuan followed up with his spear. Suddenly, the evil divine king attacked with his sword and blocked Lu Yuan's figure. Lu Yuan paused for a moment. The kind divine king and Azura's attacks came one after another. The god-slaying spear swung in a circle and repelled the 3 gods at the same time. The destruction god took advantage of the opening and got the divine halberd of destruction again. Chapter 1200. The 5 divine kings were indeed existences that complemented each other. Their coordination was flawless. They were actually in a stalemate with Lu Yuan. The battle could be said to be extremely intense. Every time Lu Yuan was about to beat a drowning dog, there would always be another divine king who would step in to stop him and buy time for him. In this battle, Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear and did not hurt anyone. Clang! The spear and sword clashed. The god-slaying spear hit the judgment divine sword directly. The terrifying murderous aura and fiendish aura surged wildly towards the evil divine king. The terrifying murderous aura caused the evil divine king to feel a chill in his heart. His body could not help but stop abruptly. The judgment divine sword was struck away and the god-slaying spear pierced towards the evil divine king's chest. Evil, be careful. A slightly anxious female voice rang out. The evil divine king's body was knocked away and streaks of white light hit the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear shone with bloody light and shattered all the white light. However, the evil divine king had already escaped from the god-slaying spear's killing blow. Being targeted by the god-slaying spear, there was no way to escape. However, It was not impossible to interrupt if there was a third party who took the god-slaying spear's attack head-on. From the beginning of the battle until now, the scene just now had happened countless times. It was also because of this that Lu Yuan did not take any credit for it. Lu Yuan was very strong. Extremely strong. Not only was he not at a disadvantage when facing the 5 divine kings alone, he was also pressuring the 5 divine kings. At the beginning, the 5 divine kings could be said to be full of confidence. However, as the battle progressed until now, their confidence could be said to have taken a huge hit. Their expressions were extremely solemn. Lu Yuan's terror had somewhat exceeded their imagination. Not a single attack could hurt Lu Yuan. On the contrary, they had to work hard to deal with each of Lu Yuan's attacks. Their instincts told them that as long as they were grazed by the god-slaying spear in Lu Yuan's hand, they would suffer unimaginable injuries or even die. No one dared to underestimate the terrifying spear that had easily broken Lucifer's immortal body. That thing was the nemesis of almost all gods, and it was beyond everyone's imagination. After letting the evil God King escape from his grasp again, Lu Yuan narrowed his eyes. He could not help but tighten his grip on the god-slaying spear. You guys do have some skills. Next, I'm going to be serious. Lu Yuan said indifferently. The aura on his body surged wildly again. The 5 great divine kings' expressions changed at the same time. This guy could actually still continue to become stronger. Lu Yuan, I think we can have a good talk, the heavenly life goddess said in a gentle voice as she pursed her lips. Lu Yuan's strength was too strong. Even if the 5 of them attacked together, they would not be able to fight against him. But now, Lu Yuan's strength seemed to be able to continue to grow. This was a little scary. If they continued to fight, the consequences would be unpredictable. So, perhaps it would be better to have a talk with Lu Yuan and see if they could reconcile. Hearing the words of the heavenly life goddess, the evil god king and the others frowned. Their eyes kept flickering, but they did not open their mouths to stop her. Lu Yuan was indeed too strong. If they continued to fight, the possibility of them losing was very high. They also had a trump card, but this trump card could not be used easily. Once it was used, the consequences would be equally serious. It would cause a lot of damage, and it would have a great impact on their strength. They might not be able to recover even after countless days. They were the 5 divine kings of the divine realm, and they had to be responsible for the divine realm. If their strength was seriously damaged, not only would their lives be threatened, but even the divine realm would experience a violent upheaval. They did not want such a thing to happen. They were different from first-tier gods. Even if a first-tier god died, with them suppressing, there would not be too big of a problem. And once they were in trouble, the divine realm would not be far from collapse. So even if it was humiliating to take the initiative to make peace with Lu Yuan, a real man knew when to yield and when to stand tall. As long as they could successfully protect the divine realm, a little humiliation was nothing. Have a good talk. Looking at the beautiful face of the heavenly life goddess, Lu Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Goddess, don't you think it's a little late to say such words now? If you had such an attitude at the beginning, I would have welcomed a peace talk with you. But now, forget it. Compared to a so-called peace talk, I think it's more reliable to let them die completely. Is my woman so easy to bully?" Lu Yuan said softly. The killing intent on his face was unusually firm. The heavenly life goddess's eyes dimmed slightly. She said, "It's also good for you to have a talk. I'm thinking for the divine realm, and at the same time, I'm also saving you. If we really go all out, you will die." The voice of the heavenly life goddess was very calm, but there was an unquestionable meaning. Even Lu Yuan did not doubt the authenticity of her words. "Since that's the case, I'll wait and see how you'll kill me. Either I die, or you fall. There's no other outcome." Lu Yuan said faintly, and his eyes suddenly sharpened. "Lin." Lu Yuan lightly spat out a word, and the aura on his body skyrocketed again, reaching an unprecedented level. The secret character of Lin of the 9 secrets. Once one stepped into the God-forbidden realm, they would be invincible against those of the same level, and also invincible against those of a higher level. If Gu Yuana's secret character of Lin only allowed her to be supreme among those of the same level, then Lu Yuan's secret character of Lin was enough to make him invincible against those of a higher level. At this moment, Lu Yuan's strength had reached an unimaginable level. Ha! Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear and swung it horizontally. Boom! The terrifying spear swept out, and the 5 divine kings were all sent flying, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. What cooperation! What tacit understanding! In the face of absolute strength, everything seemed so laughable. The 5 divine kings, who could still fight Lu Yuan back and forth, couldn't even take a casual spear strike from Lu Yuan when he used the secret character of Lin. This terrifying increase in strength was the true power of the secret character of Lin of the 9 secrets. This is the true power of the secret character of Lin. I'm still far from it. Gu Yuana couldn't help but sigh softly when she saw Lu Yuan display his invincible might and easily defeat the 5 divine kings. When she used the secret character of Lin, she could barely suppress the evil divine king and the kind divine king. Compared to the current Lu Yuan, there was no comparison at all. The 5 divine kings struggled to stand up, and their eyes were filled with disbelief as they looked at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan was too strong, so strong that he was like a god or a demon. Are we going to use our trump card? The heavenly life goddess said softly, looking at Lu Yuan with a complicated expression. Do we have any other choice? The kind divine king said faintly. If they used their trump card, they would be severely injured, and the divine world would be severely shaken. If they didn't use their trump card, they would die now. And in the current situation, it was obvious that they could only save their own lives first. Chapter 1201. I didn't think that we would be forced to this extent one day. It's a little funny when I think about it. The destruction god laughed coldly, his face full of mockery. The 5 god kings had actually lost to a young junior who didn't even have a godly seat. They had lost all face. What's so funny? It won't be funny if we kill him. The Azura god's eyes flashed sharply, and his blood-red eyes exuded a cold killing intent. You're right. Everything will be fine if we kill him, the evil god said calmly. The evil god king said calmly. The evil aura on his body suddenly surged. A black pillar of light that reached the sky suddenly rose from his body. Then, the kind god king, the goddess of life, and the others trembled at the same time. White, green, purple, and red pillars of light rose at the same time. The power of good, evil, life, destruction, and order began to quickly intertwine. The auras of the 5 god kings quickly merged into one. Heaven and earth shook, and the wind and clouds changed color. An inexplicable ancient aura rushed over, and the entire Douluo continent trembled. The small world that Lu Yuan had cut open was instantly shattered, and the space-time barrier disappeared. The small world returned to the embrace of the Douluo continent. Just a little bit of the aura that had merged was enough to completely break the space-time barrier. This made Lu Yuan's eyes tremble, and his expression became serious for the first time. Light gathered, and the bodies of the 5 god kings gradually dissipated, turning into 5 god seeds with mysterious auras, black, white, purple, green, and red. Between the god seeds, there was a supreme, noble, and supreme aura slowly condensing. Abuchi, stop them, quick! Gu Yuana's anxious voice rang out, and there was an unprecedented panic in her voice. Lu Yuan could clearly feel her fear, confusion, and disbelief. You can't break it. Don't waste your energy. Lu Yuan shook his head. There was a very strong light barrier around the 5 god seeds, and he couldn't break it. Even with the god-slaying spear in his hand, he couldn't break it. This was his intuition, and his intuition had always been very accurate. It's over, it's over. Hearing Lu Yuan's words, Gu Yuana's expression became weary, and her pretty face became pale. What's wrong? Why are you so agitated? Even if they're very powerful after fusing together, Abuchi isn't weak either, so what are you afraid of? Chihiro Snow asked in a perplexed manner. Lu Yuan defeated the 5 divine kings so easily just now. Even if they used this so-called trump card, Lu Yuan might not necessarily lose. The Lin secret character was so strong, And Lu Yuan still had the Shi secret character and the true dragon claw. With so many trump cards, what was there to be afraid of? You don't understand. No matter how many secret techniques Ibuchi has, there's no way he can win. How can this be? How can they restore this being? It's impossible. Jiyu Yuena exclaimed, her purple eyes filled with panic. What's going on? Tell me. Chihiro Snow was anxious. Jiyu Yuena's face was full of panic, but she didn't explain clearly, which made her feel puzzled. The existence after they fused together is the God of creation, the God of creation who created the entire divine world. The God of creation is an existence that far surpasses the divine king realm by God knows how many levels, but Ibuchi doesn't even have a god position. The gap is too big, and this is not something that can be made up for by so-called secret techniques. Jiyu Yuena smiled bitterly. No one knew better than her how powerful the God of creation was. It was a terrifying existence that made people despair. The God of creation who created the entire divine world. Chihiro Snow sucked in a breath of cold air. No matter how ignorant she was, she knew what kind of existence the God of creation was. This was the true supreme existence in the legends. From the beginning to the end, in all the myths and legends, the God of creation was the strongest one. He gave people the impression that he was invincible. Lu Yuan was indeed powerful, but could he win against the God of creation? Chihiro Snow's heart was also fiercely hanging in the air. Enough, don't say any more. Believe in Ibuchi, he will win, because he is Lu Yuan. He will not lose, and it is impossible for him to lose. Seeing the panicked look of the two, Bibidon scolded. Although she was also worried in her heart, they must not panic at this time. They must not add the slightest burden to Lu Yuan at this time. Listening to Bibidon's words, the two nodded, but their eyes were still full of worry. Step back a little, the next battle will be very dangerous. Don't get involved in it. Lu Yuan's clear voice sounded. His voice was still as calm as water, and Jiyu Yuena and the others couldn't help but feel relieved. Lu Yuan seems to be very confident. This is the God of creation, can he deal with it? Could it be? The two guessed in their hearts, and they listened to Lu Yuan's words and retreated very far away. Lu Yuan looked ahead quietly. The 5 god seeds had already completely fused into one, and a new life aura was being nurtured, and terrifying power was surging out. The light dissipated, and a colossal figure appeared. His body was so huge that one couldn't see the end of it. White clouds hovered around his waist, and his body was like a giant pillar that pierced straight into the sky. His ferocious muscles and tall and mighty body were all proclaiming that he possessed extremely terrifying power. He was just standing there, and the Douluo continent was collapsing. His terrifying power was beyond what the Douluo continent could withstand, and it could dissipate at any time. He waved his hand gently, and the entire Douluo continent stopped collapsing. He lowered his colossal head, and his eyes were as big as ordinary suns, and he looked directly at Lu Yuan with an intimidating gaze. Those two gazes exerted unprecedented pressure on Lu Yuan. Indeed, I knew it would be like this. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. The god-slaying spear shone brightly, and soul rings lit up one after another. Every time a soul ring lit up, the god-slaying spear's power would increase by a level. The god-slaying spear didn't have any soul skills, but its power could continuously increase. Every time a soul ring appeared, it was as if a seal had been undone, and its power would increase by a lot. 3 soul rings lit up, and the god-slaying spear's power was completely isolated from the terrifying pressure. The 5 god kings fused into one to form the God of creation. My guess was right. Lu Yuan muttered to himself. He had long guessed that this would happen. After all, the God of creation could split into 5 god seeds, so it wasn't impossible for the 5 god kings to fuse into one. What was happening now proved that his guess was right. I said that no matter how the dragon god struggled, he would lose, and the god-beast clan would lose. Naya didn't believe me back then. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. With the 5 god kings as a trump card, even 10 dragon gods would lose in the end, let alone 1 dragon god. This wasn't a coincidence, and it wasn't a trick by the human gods. This was a completely inevitable outcome. Because of the disparity in power, the outcome had been determined from the start. Chapter 1202. Lu Yuan spoke softly as the soul rings on the god-slaying spear flashed. Layers of power were unleashed, and the god-slaying spear was repelled by the god of creation. After releasing 3 soul rings, the god-slaying spear's power had increased significantly. As it was held in Lu Yuan's hands, it exuded a strong killing intent. It was terrifying and cold. The god-slaying spear's bone-chilling aura seemed to have broken free of all rules and obstructions. No matter what was in front of it, it seemed to be able to destroy it in one strike. This spear is very powerful. However, as its owner, you are too weak. The god of creation spoke softly, and his voice shook the heavens and earth. He lifted his hand and slammed it down towards Lu Yuan. Suddenly, the sky seemed to darken. A huge palm print that covered the heavens and earth came crashing down from the sky. The palm print went all the way down. Everywhere it passed, space collapsed, and water and fire reversed. Everything in the world seemed to be reduced to nothing under this palm. There was no doubt that if this palm hit the Douluo continent, the entire Douluo continent would be smashed to smithereens. A godly king could already destroy a planet like the Douluo continent. What more a god of creation, who was much stronger than a godly king? Lu Yuan looked at the huge palm that was slamming towards him. The 4th silver-gold soul ring on the god-slaying spear shone again, and the god-slaying spear's power increased once more. Lu Yuan soared into the sky. The god-slaying spear released a demonic blood-red light as it pierced towards the huge palm that was slamming towards him. He didn't hesitate at all. He clashed head-on with it. The god-slaying spear and the gigantic palm collided, emitting an immeasurably dazzling divine light. The huge palm slammed down, and the god-slaying spear was sent flying. Lu Yuan's body was also smashed into a cloud of blood mist. The huge palm didn't stop moving forward. Some of its remaining energy struck the continent, which wasn't much smaller than the Douluo continent. Lava surged out from the cracks. In just an instant, the entire continent was covered by lava. Some of the other life forms on it were almost wiped out. Just a single palm was able to cause such terrifying damage. The god of creation's strength was indescribably strong. The giant palm slowly moved away. There was nothing left in the void except for the god-slaying spear that was spinning. Abuchi, Abuchi, Abuchi. Seeing Lu Yuan turned into a bloody mist, Jiyu Yuana, Bibidon, and Chihiro Snow let out heart-wrenching roars at the same time. Tears gushed out from their faces, and all of them were covered in tears. This sudden turn of events was completely out of their expectations. For a moment, it could be said that their hearts had suffered a huge blow. They could only watch helplessly as Lu Yuan was blasted into a bloody mist. How could they accept such a blow? The 3 of them were about to rush forward as they cried. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. They couldn't help but stop in their tracks. Their beautiful eyes couldn't help but look over. The bloody mist in the void quickly condensed. Lu Yuan's figure suddenly reappeared. He gently waved his hand, and the god-slaying spear burst out with bloody light again. It landed in his hand. Abuchi, you're not dead. Chihiro Snow's red lips parted slightly. Her tear-stained face was filled with surprise. She looked extremely adorable. Lu Yuan looked at Chihiro Snow and snapped, "What are you thinking, silly? I have the esoteric character. How can I die? Does your man look like someone who will die early?" His esoteric character had been completed, and he could be reborn from a single drop of blood. In addition to the endless energy brought by the clear breath scripture, he was even more immortal than an immortal. Not only could he be reborn endlessly, but he could also stay at the peak forever. Was it that easy to kill him? Yes, you have the esoteric character. Chihiro Snow was stunned. She suddenly smiled through her tears and reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. It's good that you know. Watch quietly. No one is allowed to come forward. Otherwise, when I'm done, I'll punish you according to the family rules, Lu Yuan said fiercely. TSK, I'm not afraid of you. Chihiro Snow pouted, her face full of arrogance. Can you win? Jiyu Yuana asked worriedly. The strength of the god of creation was simply too terrifying. The palm just now directly blasted Lu Yuan into a bloody mist. Don't worry, I can exhaust him to death. I have endless divine power. Moreover, the real battle has just begun. Lu Yuan smiled with a relaxed look on his face. Then you be careful. Jiu Yuana exhorted. Since Lu Yuan was full of confidence, she naturally wouldn't doubt him. And the existence of the esoteric character had completely eliminated their worries. Therefore, Jiu Yuana's heart was relieved. The esoteric character of creation, this guy is still the strongest. Bibidon sighed softly. She pulled Jiu Yuana and Chihiro Snow further away. The aftermath of the battle between the two was really terrifying, and it was safer to stay further away. Seeing the three girls' actions, Lu Yuan was relieved. The fifth greenish-gold soul ring on the god-slaying spear in his hand shone, and the terrifying killing intent of the god-slaying spear increased by another level. The god-slaying spear let out a loud sound. In an instant, heaven and earth shook, and the sun and moon lost their colors. Even the god of creation narrowed her eyes. What a fierce spear! If Lu Yuan's strength was similar to his, this spear would probably be able to finish him off in one hit. I've said it before. This spear is a good spear, but you're too weak. Take another hit from me. Regarding Lu Yuan's rebirth, the god of creation wasn't moved at all. He classified the scene of Lu Yuan's resurrection as Lucifer's undying body. Although it was difficult to deal with, it could still be defeated. Lucifer's undying body might be unbreakable to the divine king, but it could be easily broken by the god of creation. Lu Yuan might be difficult to deal with, but with absolute strength, the god of creation was still confident that he could deal with him. As long as one had absolute strength, there was nothing in this world that couldn't be broken. This was the so-called one force can break 10,000 laws. He was prepared to finish off Lu Yuan with this attack. Good, I'm looking forward to it. Lu Yuan smiled lightly and stabbed with the god-slaying spear in his hand. When the spear struck, heaven and earth shook. Just one more soul ring flashed, but the power of the god-slaying spear seemed to have doubled. It wantonly emitted a terrifying aura. Boom! The god-slaying spear and the god of creation's fist collided again. Compared to the god of creation's huge fist, Lu Yuan's figure was as small as an ant. Unsurprisingly, Lu Yuan was beaten up again. Even the god-slaying spear, which had increased its power, was sent flying again. After so many years, the god of creation was the first person to be able to withstand the god-slaying spear twice without suffering any damage. Die. This time, the god of creation didn't intend to give Lu Yuan any chance. He stretched out a huge finger and quickly pointed at the blood mist again. Chapter 1203. The blood mist churned and condensed into Lu Yuan's appearance in just a moment. The esoteric word blood rebirth was extremely fast. Unless all the vitality in the blood was quickly erased when Lu Yuan was beaten up, Lu Yuan would be able to recover completely if there was a slight hesitation. The 9-colored divine armor shone brightly. Lu Yuan looked at the god-slaying spear with sparkling eyes. He didn't expect the god-slaying spear to be unable to hurt the creation god even with 5 soul rings activated. The creation god was indeed stronger than he had imagined. Fortunately, he didn't panic. Everything was still within his expectations. Lu Yuan looked at the attack that was coming towards him and couldn't help but smile. His palm shook slightly, and Lucifer's 6th 9-colored soul ring on the god-slaying spear also exuded an extremely bright light. Then let's continue, Lu Yuan said indifferently. The 6th soul ring lit up and the god-slaying spear shone brightly. Its ferocious aura were unprecedentedly enhanced. The pitch-black god-slaying spear carried a thick blood light. A demonic shadow flashed in the bloodlight and let out a strange chanting sound as if a demonic god was whispering. God-slaying spear, God-slaying, Lu Yuan shouted. The god-slaying spear pierced out with an extremely terrifying murderous aura. The god-slaying spear directly touched the creation god's fingertip. In an instant, it was as if a meteor had hit Earth. A shocking energy wave burst out from the point of contact. Lu Yuan's body was sent flying as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. Even his body was severely injured. However, this time, his body didn't explode and he wasn't beaten into a bloody mist. The god-slaying spear's power was greatly enhanced and negated a large amount of the damage. The esoteric word quickly circulated and the injuries all over his body were completely healed in an instant. On the other side, the creation god was finally injured. Purplish gold blood kept dripping from his finger. The god-slaying spear had broken through his defense and caused him a certain amount of damage. Even the creation god's divine soul felt an intense pain caused by the god-slaying spear. The wound can't be healed. The god of creation looked at his injured finger with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He used his palm like a knife and directly cut off the injured finger. The finger, which was as huge as a mountain, fell down and stabbed into the ground, making a loud noise. After cutting off the injured finger, divine power surged, and the creation god's finger grew back, and the 5 fingers became complete again. He looked at Lu Yuan. Light gathered in his hand, and a huge sword shining with colorful divine light appeared in his hand. It was the weapon of the god of creation, the god of creation's sword of creation. The world creation divine sword was formed from the fusion of the supra-divine tools of the 5 great divine kings. However, because it was missing the Azura sacred sword, the current world creation divine sword was not complete. It was missing a small section of the sword tip, but its power was still terrifying beyond imagination. A very powerful spear, but you are still destined to lose, because you will never have the chance to hurt me again. Next, I will use the divine sword to fight. The creation god said faintly. If he had used the god of creation's sword of creation and not the tip of his finger, the god-slaying spear would not have been able to hurt him. Your spear is indeed terrifying, but you are still far from it. You are not even a true god. The creation god's voice did not change. He was wary of the god-slaying spear, extremely wary. However, Lu Yuan was too weak. Even with such a powerful god-slaying spear, Lu Yuan could not win against him. Although Lu Yuan's aura surpassed that of a divine king, and he even had first-grade divine power, in the eyes of the creation god, he was still too weak. Moreover, he did not even have a divine seat, so how could he be considered a true god? He, you are inexplicably confident. It is not difficult for me to win against you. Even in my current state, I still have a way to win against you. One word, delay. You will not exist forever. I think there must be a time limit. 6 hours or 1 day? Or 3 days? But no matter how long it takes, as long as the time limit is up, you will still disintegrate. I have unlimited energy, and I can instantly recover from my injuries and be reborn with a drop of blood. I will be able to delay until you disintegrate. At that time, I will be able to destroy the 5 divine kings with a flip of my hand. How is it? Are you a little panicked? Lu Yuan smiled faintly as he looked at the huge creation god. His expression was calm, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. But you don't have to panic. I like to defeat my enemies head-on. I will not use such methods. It is not in line with my character. I prefer to crush my enemies cleanly. You are right about one thing. I am indeed not a true god. Since that is the case, I will become a god. I have played enough. It is time to end this. Lu Yuan spoke faintly as he took a step forward. Boundless white light surged from his body, and the world consciousness of the Douluo continent trembled rapidly. The power of the entire continent was quickly exerted on Lu Yuan's body. The white light soared into the sky, straight into the clouds. Following his senses, Lu Yuan seemed to have become one with the entire heaven and earth. He could clearly sense the throbbing from the depths of the universe. Plane after plane, planet after planet, star after star that shone eternally, and brilliant galaxy after galaxy were all trembling violently. Boundless power of the world gathered and was directly injected into Lu Yuan's body. Lu Yuan's body suddenly grew taller. After a short moment, his body had already exceeded the limits of the Douluo planet. His body was as huge as the entire planet, and it was still growing rapidly. If Lu Yuan was an ant in front of the god of creation before, It was now the god of creation who was reduced to an ant in front of Lu Yuan. Divine realm, heh. Lu Yuan saw the divine realm above the Douluo world at a glance, and he could clearly sense the planes that the divine realm was in charge of. Lu Yuan stretched out his hand, and the power of the divine realm was also exerted on his body. White light shone. Lu Yuan's mind moved, and his body stopped growing. The clear air god's seed in his mind bloomed completely at this moment, turning into a bright godhead. Godhead formed. The god of rules appeared. I am the rules, I control all things. The power of the universe, apply to me. At the moment when he became the god of rules, Lu Yuan established a resonance with the origin of the universe. He truly controlled the entire universe and could mobilize the power of the entire universe at will. In the entire universe, he was the only true god. The power of the clear air god's seed didn't lie entirely in the energy it contained. What was more powerful was its connection with the entire universe. The clear air god's seed of heaven's foundation contained the power of rules. After countless years of nurturing, it had already connected with the origin of the universe. This was the true power of the clear air god's seed. This was also the essence of why the god of rules could surpass the creation god. Chapter 1204. The creation god had created the god realm and many other planes. He was indeed unbelievably powerful. However, compared to the vast and boundless universe, the god realm and several other planes were truly like a drop in the ocean. They were immeasurably tiny. After Lu Yuan became the god of rules, the power of the entire universe increased his strength to an indescribable level. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he had reached the heavens in a single step. As long as he was in this universe, he was truly invincible. No one could match him. Planes could collapse with a flick of his finger, galaxies could collapse with a wave of his hand. To the current Lu Yuan, these were small matters. Lu Yuan lowered his head gently. His huge face covered the entire sky. At this moment, the creation god's body, which was 100,000 feet tall, was actually so small in his eyes. How did you become so strong? The creation god's eyes were filled with disbelief. Under Lu Yuan's gaze, his heart was filled with fear and trembling. He didn't have any desire to resist. At this moment, Lu Yuan was so powerful that he felt despair. How is it? Are you surprised? Are you surprised? It doesn't seem that difficult to become a god, Lu Yuan said softly. Every sentence caused the entire Douluo continent to tremble. Even Lu Yuan's words were so difficult for the Douluo continent to resist. So weak. Condense, solid, strong, Lu Yuan said softly. 3 golden words flew out and landed on the Douluo continent. Immediately, the Douluo planet's firmness increased greatly. Even the continent that was originally destroyed by the battle was quickly restored to its original state. This was a kind of use of the power of rules. Lu Yuan's words caused the Douluo continent's firmness to increase by more than 10 times. If one god king could destroy the Douluo continent in the past, then the current Douluo continent couldn't be destroyed even if 5 god kings attacked together. The increase in the firmness of the world meant that the destructive power of the strong had decreased. If a titled Douluo could destroy mountains and rivers in the past, they could only destroy city walls now. Some people who didn't understand these reasons might think that a titled Douluo was just SOSO. Actually, that was not the case. The strength of the experts did not change. What changed was the strength of the world. The world's consciousness was the happiest about the strengthening of the Douluo continent. It shook rapidly, purple clouds lingered in the sky, and golden lotuses appeared on the ground. This was a celebration from the Douluo world. Chihiro Snow and the others looked at the changes in the world in amazement. Their faces were filled with indescribable joy. Ibuchi has become a god, Chihiro Snow said happily. Yes, he has become a god, and a very powerful one at that, Bibidon said softly. 3 words had changed the entire Douluo continent, so how could he not be powerful? The god of laws controls all things. We'll win for sure this time, Jiu Yuana murmured softly with a beautiful smile on her face. There was no longer a trace of worry on her face. Your honor. Di Tian and the other soul beasts lowered their heads and expressed their allegiance to Hu Yuhao from the bottom of their hearts. What kind of god have you become? The god of creation tried his best to raise his head, but Lu Yuan's pressure was so terrifying that it was difficult for him to even raise his head. The god of laws. I'm a god who was born above you. All right, now that you know, it's time to go, Lu Yuan said calmly and extended a finger. The finger of laws. As soon as he finished speaking, his index finger slowly descended toward the god of creation. An intense sense of danger shook the god of creation's heart, but he couldn't even dodge. He could only watch as Lu Yuan's index finger slowly descended. Not long ago, he had extended a finger to Lu Yuan, but now, he had completely changed. The difference was that Lu Yuan was full of confidence when facing the god of creation's finger. He even dared to take the initiative to attack and hurt the god of creation. However, the god of creation felt a strong sense of death when facing Lu Yuan's finger. He truly couldn't fight back. Lu Yuan's finger was like a real giant pillar that could hold up the sky. It was unimaginably huge. Just one of his fingers was bigger than the entire body of the god of creation. Wherever Lu Yuan's fingertip passed, there was nothing. All the elements were turned into nothingness under that finger. I'll fight you to the death. Feeling Lu Yuan's finger getting closer and closer, the god of creation couldn't stand it anymore. He held the terrifying divine weapon that had once been used to create the divine realm, burst forth with all his strength, and swung it hard at Lu Yuan's finger. Boom! The god of creation collided with Lu Yuan's finger. Surprisingly, no energy fluctuations erupted because all the energy fluctuations were turned into nothingness under Lu Yuan's fingertip. With a crisp sound, the huge god of creation cracked layer by layer, turned into 4 supradivine weapons, and was directly thrown out and landed on the continent. Unsurprisingly, the fingertip continued to move forward and directly hit the god of creation's body amidst his roar. It was as simple as crushing an ant. Under Lu Yuan's finger, the god of creation's body directly collapsed, and once again turned into 5 streams of light. They were the 5 divine kings. Lu Yuan still held back in the end because not all of the 5 divine kings deserved to die. Otherwise, that finger could completely destroy all traces of the god of creation's existence, and the 5 divine kings would definitely be turned into nothingness. The bodies of the 5 divine kings were scattered, and their divine equipment was shattered. Everyone's face was abnormally pale. Lu Yuan had forcefully destroyed the god of creation, and the 5 of them had suffered irreparable injuries. Other than Lu Yuan, there was no one else in this world who could cure them. The god-slaying spear flew out and pierced through a black figure. As the evil divine king cried out in pain, his body gradually dissipated, leaving behind a black god's seed. It was the seed of evil. At this moment, there was only the purest evil divine power in the seed of evil. The evil divine seat also contained within. As for the evil divine king's consciousness, it had already been completely destroyed by the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear trembled slightly, and the evil divine king's divine power gathered to form a 9-colored soul ring that condensed on the god-slaying spear. The 7th soul ring of the god-slaying spear appeared. Evil! Evil divine king! The remaining 4 divine kings shouted frantically. They didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, the evil divine king had completely disappeared from the world, leaving no trace behind. The god-slaying spear flew out and landed in Lu Yuan's palm. At this moment, Lu Yuan had already returned to his original size. He held the god-slaying spear and smiled at the remaining 4 divine kings. The 4 of you, my god-slaying spear still lacks 2 soul rings. Who do you think I should choose? Lu Yuan's eyes flashed as he smiled faintly and asked. End of the main text. Chapter 1205. The god-slaying spear emitted a thick bloody light and a fiendish aura. Lu Yuan's white clothes fluttered as he smiled at the 4 of them. At this moment, Lu Yuan's face was calm and there wasn't the slightest bit of power from his body. However, his indifferent gaze caused the remaining 4 divine kings' pupils to shrink at the same time, and their expressions changed. In this world, there was no one who wasn't afraid of death at all. The moment death came, everyone would be terrified at the first moment. This was human nature. Lu Yuan looked around lightly and swung the god-slaying spear slightly. He smiled faintly and said, "Why, no one is speaking? Don't tell me you guys think that I won't kill if you guys don't speak. I have to gather all my soul rings." The god-slaying spear moved slightly and moved past the 4 divine kings. Lu Yuan's double pupils flashed slightly with a hint of teasing. Once upon a time, the 5 divine kings were high and mighty. They held the power of life and death in their hands and were incomparably arrogant. They could kill whoever they wanted and did things according to their own preferences. But now, the situation was completely reversed. They had all become meat on Lu Yuan's chopping board. Whether they lived or died depended entirely on Lu Yuan's mood. It had to be said that the wheel of fortune really turned. Looking at them like this, to be honest, Lu Yuan's heart was very carefree. The god realm had suppressed the soul beast race for so many years, and today, it was finally overturned by him. And he would rebuild a more reasonable and fair ruling system on the basis of the god realm. Humans and soul beasts didn't have to fight to the death. They could even live in harmony. Fighting definitely couldn't be completely eliminated, but it could be completely controlled within a reasonable range. This would be more beneficial for a more diversified, lasting, and healthy development. And all of this was what Lu Yuan was going to do next. But before doing all this, he still had to deal with these guys in front of him and take over the god realm. These were already his spoils of war. The god-slaying spear moved slightly, and the fiendish aura caused the 4 divine kings to frown. This spear was too threatening to gods, and they were afraid of this spear from the bottom of their hearts. "Why, no one has spoken yet. All right, then I'll choose my own people." Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear tightly. A sharp light flashed past his eyes, and a terrifying killing intent flashed past. "Wait." Just as Lu Yuan was about to attack, a gentle and pleasant voice sounded. The heavenly life goddess slowly stood up, a hint of determination in her beautiful green eyes. "Kill me, please let them go," the heavenly life goddess said in a gentle voice as she bowed toward Lu Yuan. "Little Green," the god of destruction tugged at the goddess of life anxiously. "Kill me. I only beg you to let Xiao Lu go. She didn't do anything wrong. On the other hand, I was the one who injured Jiu Yuana during the Battle of the Dragon Gods. I'm guilty of killing me. Little Green never attacked them. She's innocent." The god of destruction hurriedly shouted. He didn't intend to speak at first, but when the heavenly life goddess took the initiative to seek death, he couldn't hold himself back any longer. He was afraid of death, but he loved his wife more. For the heavenly life goddess, he was willing to die. Moreover, in this battle, the 7 original sin gods under his command had all died. He and the other 4 god kings had all been defeated by Lu Yuan. Seeing that the god realm was about to fall into the hands of Lu Yuan, he was already prepared to die. After all, his biggest dream in life was to strengthen the god realm. Now that the god realm was about to fall, his dream could be said to be completely shattered. He had completely lost the goal of his life. Instead of living like a walking corpse, he would rather die with a bang. The only thing he wanted now was to protect the heavenly life goddess. This was the only thing he was worried about. Little Green, hearing the god of destruction's words, the heavenly life goddess panicked and hurriedly said, "Little Green's brain is not good. His spouting nonsense. Please kill me. Please spare Little Green's life. Don't listen to Little Green's nonsense. Kill me. I gave Jiu Yuana several blows and directly injured her. You should kill me." The god of destruction said loudly. "Kill me. Kill me." The heavenly life goddess and the god of destruction spoke one after the other. For a moment, it was very noisy. "Shut up." Lu Yuan shouted angrily. A trace of anger flashed in his eyes. The murderous aura on the god-killing spear surged. "Are you teaching me how to do things?" Lu Yuan raised the god-killing spear and pointed it directly at the god of destruction's head. "You said you hurt Nao, right? Very well, I'll remember. Isn't it easy to die? I'll fulfill your wish." "No." The heavenly life goddess took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the god of destruction. Her expression was full of pleading. "Kill me. Please spare little Green's life. Please spare the kind Azura's life. I beg you." The heavenly life goddess's eyes were full of pleading as she spoke with a sincere expression. Lu Yuan frowned slightly and asked, "Goddess, are you that unafraid of death?" The heavenly life goddess laughed bitterly and said, "Who wouldn't be afraid of death? But there are always things in this world that are more important than one's own life." Hearing this, Lu Yuan was silent for a moment. Then he said lightly, "Goddess, you really are a very good god. You are compassionate and kind. I admire you." Lu Yuan bowed slightly and saluted. Then, he moved the god-slaying spear away and said, "A god like you should live even more. Your existence is more meaningful to this world. You want to die, but I won't kill you." Under the heavenly life goddess's shocked gaze, Lu Yuan pointed the god-killing spear at the Azura god. A terrifying murderous aura locked onto him. "You seem to be very happy and relaxed. Why, seeing the two of them fighting to die, do you feel that you don't have to die anymore? To be honest, among these people, the one I want to kill the most is you. Do you think you are worthy of the power of order that you control? Is there anyone among the 5 divine kings more shameless and despicable than you? You are the first divine king to launch a sneak attack from behind. The god of fire is under your command, right? Sure enough, like master, like subordinate. The god of fire is already dead. You should accompany him." Lu Yuan said lightly as the god-killing spear pierced down. Originally, he didn't have much killing intent towards the Azura god. However, the Azura god's actions had indeed angered him. Especially when the heavenly life goddess and the god of destruction were fighting to sacrifice themselves, he was actually rejoicing in his heart. He was simply heartless. Leaving such a person alive was a waste of air. "Lu Yuan, no." When Lu Yuan pierced down with the spear, a familiar voice came from afar. Lu Yuan frowned slightly. Under the Azura god's fearful gaze, the god-killing spear pierced through the Azura god's body. An endless amount of murderous aura instantly engulfed him. Chapter 1206. After being hit by the god-slaying spear, there was basically no chance of survival. The boundless murderous aura directly destroyed the Shura god's life force. The Shura god, a god king, was dead. Lu Yuan shook slightly, and the Shura god's body exploded. Its divine power was completely absorbed by the god-slaying spear and turned into the god-slaying spear's 8th soul ring. The only thing left was a blood-red god's seed. It was the Shura god's seed, which contained the Shura god's position. It could be said that whoever obtained the Shura god's seed would be the new Shura god. Lu Yuan stretched out his hand and put the Shura god's seed into his star ring. He placed it together with the evil god's seed. The evil god's seed naturally belonged to Bibidon. This purest evil was most suitable for Bibidon, and the Shura god's seed was left for Hulena. Hulena, who had the god-slaying domain, and the Shura god's position were quite compatible. Shura, the goddess of life, the god of destruction, and the kind god king exclaimed at the same time. The corners of their eyes twitched. Another god king had died at the hands of Lu Yuan. He had died right in front of their eyes. He had been killed so easily by Lu Yuan's spear. This man is really ruthless. The kind god king's heart jumped slightly. She looked at Lu Yuan with a tinge of fear in her eyes. He had attacked without any hesitation. This was a god king, but in the hands of Lu Yuan, he was no different from a chicken waiting to be slaughtered. He had killed the Shura god like he was killing a chicken. This really shocked her. Shura. Another exclamation was heard. It was difficult to hide the sorrow in the voice. The sound of the wind breaking could be heard, and 2 figures appeared. It was a man and a woman. Both of them looked very pale. They were the sea god and the ice god, who had been injured by Lu Yuan. They had been sent flying by Lu Yuan, and now they had rushed back. Lu Yuan, why did you kill Shura? Sea god's eyes were red. She reached out to grab Lu Yuan's collar. The Shura deity was his best brother. Now that the Shura deity was dead, the sea god was truly indescribably sorrowful. In his anger, he threw aside all his scruples and attacked Lu Yuan. Calm down, sea god. The ice goddess hurriedly pulled the sea god back. Lu Yuan was terrifying now. She was afraid that if the sea god angered Lu Yuan would crush him with one finger. To the current Lu Yuan, the sea god was no different from an ant. Ice goddess, let me go. I want to reason with him. The sea goddess struggled as she glared at Lu Yuan. She did not want to leave him. Sea god, are you tired of living, or do you really think that I won't kill you? Lu Yuan's eyes were indifferent. If the sea god had really pounced on him, he would not have shown mercy. Since the beginning of the battle, he had already shown mercy to the sea god several times. Otherwise, he and the ice goddess would have died long ago. There was a limit to his patience. If the sea god continued to act presumptuously, he would also be furious. The sea god was just angry. He didn't do it on purpose. Please don't take offense, the ice goddess said softly to defend the sea god. They were very close, and she did not want to see the sea god die just like that. Lu Yuan glanced at the ice goddess. This arrogant goddess who had comprehended the spear god realm seemed to have put down her arrogance and become exceptionally docile. However, thinking about it, with his current strength, who would dare to be arrogant in front of him? No matter how stubborn the ice goddess was, she was not a fool. She was also afraid of death. You're smart. You know when to advance and when to retreat. Lu Yuan said indifferently. He pointed with his finger, and a white light enveloped the ice goddess. In an instant, the ice goddess's injuries were all healed. Sensing the changes in her body, the ice goddess looked at Lu Yuan in confusion. Her eyes were full of confusion. Take the sea god back to the god realm first, in case he's stupid and wants to die again. I can't always hold back from killing. Moreover, I'll be going to the god realm later. Don't think about running away, and don't think about causing trouble. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Lu Yuan looked deeply at the ice goddess and said calmly, I understand. The ice goddess smiled bitterly. How would she dare? Lu Yuan was now so powerful that there was no limit to his strength. If she did not want to die, she could only obey him. As for the desire to resist, even the god of creation could not withstand Lu Yuan's finger. How could she resist? Sea god, let's go. The ice goddess pulled the sea god and said softly, I'm not leaving. I want to ask him why he killed the Azura god. The sea god struggled and shouted loudly. Because the Azura god deserved to be killed. Lu Yuan said calmly and waved his hand gently. The ice goddess immediately used her strength to forcefully take the sea god away. The heavily injured sea god naturally did not have much room to struggle in front of the fully recovered ice goddess. Seeing the two gods leave, Lu Yuan retracted his gaze slightly. He glanced at the goddess of life and the god of destruction, and finally stopped on the kind god king. Seeing the god-slaying spear in front of her, the kind god king's body trembled and she could not help but take a step back. Her eyes were filled with fear. Why, are you afraid? Lu Yuan looked at the kind god king and asked softly with a slight smile. The kind god king pursed her lips and looked at Lu Yuan fearfully. She did not say a word. Lu Yuan, let the kind god king go. She's a good person. Seeing the kind god king's appearance, the goddess of life could not help but plead. She's a good person? Lu Yuan smiled slightly and said calmly, would a good person deal with a pregnant woman? Goddess, you must know that because of them, I almost lost my lover and my child. Now, you're asking me to let her go. This. The goddess of life was slightly speechless. She really could not refute Lu Yuan's words. Lu Yuan sneered and used the god-slaying spear to gently lift the kind god king's chin. He asked calmly, afraid of death. You don't want to die? The kind god king trembled. The god-slaying spear touched her chin. The terrifying murderous intent made her hair stand on end. Hearing Lu Yuan's words, she bit her lip and nodded vigorously. Don't kill me, the kind god king said softly with a strong pleading tone. Oh, then why shouldn't I kill you? Give me a reason, Lu Yuan said calmly. I know I was wrong. I am willing. The kind god king bit her lip as if she was trying very hard. She struggled in her heart. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she stared straight at Lu Yuan. Her eyes were like water, exuding a strange temptation. What are you willing to do? Are you willing to serve me? Lu Yuan put away the god-slaying spear and lifted the kind God King's chin with his left hand. He carefully looked at her. The kind God King seemed to be a little shy as she softly hummed. Her beautiful face was bright red, and her beautiful eyes were slightly closed. Her red lips trembled, and when paired with her flawless snow-white face, she exuded a moving charm. Interesting. Is this a honey trap? I have to say, you are indeed very beautiful. Every frown and smile of yours is pitiful. Lu Yuan softly praised, not stingy with his words of praise. The kind God King's beauty was unrivaled in the world. She could be considered a top beauty, not at all inferior to Chihiro Snow and Jiyu Yuana. Hearing Lu Yuan's praise, the kind God King felt ashamed, but she also relaxed a little. This time, she would not have to die. But just as the kind God King was rejoicing, Lu Yuan's tone suddenly changed. Chapter 1207. But no matter how beautiful you are, you still have to die. Lu Yuan retracted his left hand. His eyes flashed with a sharp light. Why? Hearing Lu Yuan's words, the kind God King's heart, which had just relaxed a moment ago, immediately tensed up. Since Lu Yuan said she was very beautiful, why did he still want to kill her? Could it be that her looks were not attractive to Lu Yuan at all? No, she didn't believe it. Lu Yuan had many wives. It was obvious that he was a playboy. How could he not be attracted to her beauty? She was also confident that her appearance was not inferior to any of Lu Yuan's women. She was definitely a femme fatale. Moreover, her status was high and her temperament was weak and pure. Shouldn't she be more attractive to men? Yes, he must be lying to me. He's deliberately lying to frighten me. He wants to make me more obedient because he still doesn't really trust me. Yes, that must be it. The kind God King thought to herself. She couldn't help but secretly nod. Are you doubting me? I'm telling the truth. I'm willing to serve you. The kind divine king bit her delicate lips and looked at Lu Yuan with tear-stained eyes. Her beautiful eyes trembled slightly, and her pitiful expression was truly captivating. Lu Yuan had to admit that the kind God King was one of the best women he had ever seen. Her appearance was really perfect to the point of being impeccable, just like Jiyu Yuana and Chihiro Snow. Moreover, her weak and noble temperament could easily move men's hearts and arouse their desire to protect her. She was truly a peerless beauty. However, Lu Yuan smiled faintly and completely ignored the kind God King's pitiful expression. He liked beautiful women, but not just any woman. You think I'm doubting you, so I'm deliberately lying to scare you? Lu Yuan asked, a little amused. Yes. The kind God King nodded her head gently and replied with a helpless look on her face. Do you think so too? Lu Yuan looked at the goddess of life and the god of destruction beside him. The god of destruction did not speak, but his expression was full of certainty. That was what he thought. He looked at the kind-hearted god of destruction with some disdain. She had betrayed herself in order to survive and was willing to give herself to the murderer of her husband. She really did not deserve the title of god of destruction. However, the heavenly life goddess nodded slowly and said, Lu Yuan, you don't have to doubt her. Since the kind divine king has said so, she'll definitely do as she says. You don't have to scare her like this. Clearly, she also thought that Lu Yuan was deliberately intimidating the kind divine king, just to make her more obedient. After all, these god kings all knew about Lu Yuan's love affairs. He had several wives and was famous for being an affectionate man. They all believed that it was impossible for Lu Yuan to not be moved when faced with such a kind divine king. But this is also good. Although the kind divine king's actions are a little low, at least she can save her life. Moreover, Lu Yuan is powerful and has a high status. Even if she gives herself to him, it won't be a disgrace to the kind divine king. The heavenly life goddess was more open-minded. The evil divine king was already dead. She could not let the kind divine king die too. As for taking revenge on Lu Yuan, It was even more impossible. Although the kind divine king was a divine king, she was still a woman. Although she did not agree with this method of selling one's body, she could understand. After all, the kind divine king just wanted to live. The attitude of the heavenly life goddess and the god of destruction gave the kind divine king more confidence. She slowly reached out and grabbed Lu Yuan's hand, looking at him seriously. "Believe me, I'm sincere. From now on, I will serve you wholeheartedly," the kind divine king said softly. She suppressed the shame in her heart, took Lu Yuan's hand, and pressed it against her face. She just wanted to live now. Moreover, Lu Yuan's achievements and appearance were much better than the evil divine king's. His strength was also unimaginably terrifying. She did not have much resistance to her choice. Did she have feelings for the evil divine king? Of course, she did. After all, they had been together for countless years. Even if there was no love, there was still some affection. However, their feelings were not deep. It was far less important than her life. She would not die for the evil divine king. Moreover, as a woman, it did not seem to be a problem for her to rely on a true powerhouse like Lu Yuan. The weak relied on the strong. This was the law of heaven and earth. Therefore, she firmly believed that what she did was not wrong. Feeling the kind divine king's gaze, Lu Yuan was a little amused. He withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "You people are really interesting. All of you think I'm a lecher. Of course, I'm lecherous. After all men are lecherous. However, I won't take a fancy to just anyone. Kind divine king, you are indeed very beautiful. However, I want to say that you have overestimated yourself and underestimated me. I have many women, but all of them love me wholeheartedly. All of them are even willing to give up their lives for me. I treat them the same. My share would rather self-destruct than be humiliated. Na would rather sacrifice herself than let me be disturbed. I have wives like them. Do you think I'll take a fancy to you? Moreover, I'm a little obsessed with cleanliness. I don't like to use women that have been touched by others. I have no interest in other people's wives. You only have a pretty face. In terms of character and loyalty, what do you count for? I just killed your husband. You turn around and try to curry favor with me. TSK. Perhaps you think you're not wrong. However, I look down on you. Your husband is dead. What are you still alive for? Of course, everything above is secondary. You hurt Na and almost caused me to lose my child. These are the reasons why you must die. I don't care if you are a good person. I don't care if you are beautiful. I don't care if you are truly willing to serve me wholeheartedly. I only know that you deserve to die for hurting Na. That is enough. Alright, go on your way. Protect your last shred of dignity as a divine king. Lu Yuan said softly and raised the god-slaying spear again. The kind divine king looked at the approaching god-slaying spear. Her face was as white as paper. Lu Yuan's words had not only destroyed all of her confidence and pride. They had also destroyed her last hope of survival. She was despised and looked down upon. This was the first time in many years that she had experienced this. So it was all my wishful thinking. Lu Yuan, I really underestimated you. The kind divine king said softly and slowly closed her eyes. Chapter 1208. Knowing that he had no hope of surviving, the kind-hearted God King calmed down instead. She was unwilling to die. She hadn't lived long enough and didn't want to die yet. She was still feeling a little regretful. She regretted that she had to target Gu Yuana. Otherwise, she wouldn't have died. She was called the kind God King, but compared to the life goddess, her kindness was insignificant. Lu Yuan admired the life goddess from the bottom of his heart. Even though they were enemies, Lu Yuan still treated the life goddess with respect. However, Lu Yuan despised and disdained her. The gap between them was so big. If I were given another chance, I would like to be a true kind god. The kind God King thought to himself. The god-slaying spear slowly pierced the kind God King's body and took her life. No one could survive under the god-slaying spear. Lu Yuan waved his hand and a white kind-hearted god seed was put away. It contained the kind-hearted god position. The kind god king's divine power was also absorbed by the god-slaying spear and turned into the god-slaying spear's 9th soul ring. At this point, the god-slaying spear's soul rings were all gathered. Starting from the first soul ring, there were 9 soul rings: blood gold, earth gold, brilliant gold, silver gold, azure gold, 9 colors, 9 colors, 9 colors, 9 colors, 9 colors, 9 colors, 9 colors. The first 5 soul rings were all rank 1 divine rings or above. For example, the golden dragon soul ring was at the half-step godly king level. The last 4 soul rings were all godly king level soul rings. There was only one such soul ring in the world. It was absolutely unprecedented. It could even be said that there would be no one like it in the future. After all, to match Lu Yuan's soul ring, one would have to kill a rank 1 god or even a godly king. One might be able to kill a rank 1 god, but it would be extremely difficult to kill a godly king. Especially when Lu Yuan would rule the world in the future. Even if there were godly kings, they would be his people. It was basically a fantasy to want to kill him and use his soul ring. Therefore, a soul ring like Lu Yuan's was basically a miracle that couldn't be replicated. In the entire Douluo world, there was only one such soul ring. Not bad, not bad. The god-slaying spear is finally a full circle. Lu Yuan looked at the god-slaying spear in his hand and revealed a satisfied expression. With 9 soul rings gathered, the power of the god-slaying spear was raised to an unprecedented level. Its power was beyond imagination. Lu Yuan was already a god of rules. He, who controlled the universe origin, was also a universe master. In the Douluo universe, he was a supreme existence that could not be surpassed. Thousands of living beings were under his control. However, if there was anything that could break free from the restraints of the rules, then it would be the god-slaying spear in his hands. Unfortunately, this god-slaying spear was also his. Therefore, it could be said that nothing in the entire Douluo universe could escape his control. Gently moving the god-slaying spear away, Lu Yuan raised his hand slightly. A large crack appeared on the ground, and the kind god king's corpse disappeared into it. After all, she was a woman. Besides attacking Jiu Yuana, she had not done anything outrageous. Lu Yuan left her corpse intact, unlike the Azura god and the others, who were left without a corpse. The ground closed, and a huge stone tablet rose to suppress this place. The power of rules permeated the air. Without being a god king, it was impossible to break through the pressure and get close. This was also considered as letting the kind god king rest in peace, so that others would not disturb her peace. After doing all this, Lu Yuan's eyes shot daggers at the destruction god. "Come out and die," Lu Yuan said coldly. "Wait." The life goddess stood in front of the destruction god, her jade-like face full of anxiety. "Lu Yuan, didn't you say that you needed 2 soul rings, so you wanted to kill people? Now that your soul rings are full, you don't need to kill anymore," the life goddess said hurriedly. She was very anxious. She had failed to protect the Azura god and the kind god king, but now she wanted to protect her husband. He was the most important person to her, and she was willing to pay any price for it. "My soul rings are full, but that has nothing to do with whether I kill people or not. I just want to kill him, that's all," Lu Yuan said indifferently. Since the destruction god said that he had injured Jiu Yuana in the battle of the dragon gods and that he deserved to die, he would naturally help the destruction god. After all, helping others was the source of happiness. He would reluctantly send the destruction god on his way. "No, no, little Z didn't attack Jiu Yuana this time, and he didn't harm your child. Can you be merciful and let him go?" The life goddess persuaded loudly. "No, I want to kill him. If you cut the grass without removing the roots, it will grow again. He is a staunch believer of the old god realm. I don't want to let such a person go. I want to kill him." Lu Yuan shook his head and refused the life goddess' request. "Destruction god, why don't you come out and accept your death? If you are a man, don't hide behind a woman and embarrass yourself. Goddess, stay away. The power of the god-slaying spear is limitless. I don't want to hurt you." Lu Yuan pointed the god-slaying spear at the life goddess. "No, I won't," the life goddess said firmly. Suddenly, she felt a strong force behind her and was pulled behind her. The destruction god's figure was revealed. "Little Z, what are you doing?" After being pulled behind by the god of destruction, the goddess of life suddenly panicked. Her pretty face was full of panic. She pulled the destruction god with all her might, but the destruction god didn't move. He faced Lu Yuan's god-slaying spear. "Do it. I don't want to live anymore. I only have one request. Don't hurt Little Green. She is a really good god. She is compassionate, kind, and pure. People like her should live well." The god of destruction looked at Lu Yuan and enunciated each word clearly. Now, he was indeed prepared to die. The 7 original sin gods under his command had all fallen, the 5 god kings of the god realm had fallen apart, and the god realm was about to fall into Lu Yuan's demonic claws. His lifelong dream was to strengthen the god realm, but now that the god realm was about to be destroyed, and more than half of the god realm's strength had fallen, he was really disheartened. What was the point of living when he had lost his life's goal? Dying at the hands of Lu Yuan might not be a bad choice. Of course, he could die, but he couldn't let go of the life goddess. She was the love of his life. Besides his own dreams, she was the most important person in his life. But looking at Lu Yuan, he didn't think he would do anything to the life goddess. Hearing the destruction god's words, Lu Yuan nodded and said, "I admire the goddess mercy. Don't worry. After you die, I will ensure the safety of the goddess. You can go without worry." Chapter 1209. The goddess of life was kind-hearted and had helped him before, so he respected her very much. Naturally, he would not attack her. Even if the god of destruction had not made this request, he would not harm the goddess of life in the slightest. He would definitely ensure the safety of the goddess of life. Hearing Lu Yuan's words, the god of destruction nodded and felt relieved. Lu Yuan's expression was quite serious, and his tone was very sincere. He knew that the safety of the goddess of life was definitely guaranteed. The god of destruction looked at the goddess of life longingly and gently touched her face. Then, he turned around and looked at Lu Yuan calmly. "Do it. Okay, I'll fulfill your wish." Lu Yuan's eyes trembled slightly. Not to mention other things, the courage and responsibility of the god of destruction made him look at him in a new light. If the god of destruction had not said that he had injured Jiu Yuana during the battle of the dragon gods, and for the sake of his future rule, Lu Yuan would not have had to kill him. Because no matter what, Jiu Yuana and Lu Yuan had not been together at that time. Lu Yuan did not have much of an idea about the battle of the dragon gods. After all, it had been too long, and he had not personally experienced it, so he did not have a strong sense of immersion. Even though he knew that Jiu Yuana had been injured at that time, the anger in his heart was not that strong. He doted on Jiu Yuana, but naturally, he doted on the Jiu Yuana in front of him, and even more on the Jiu Yuana after she had been together with him. Therefore, Lu Yuan had killed all the people who had participated in the siege of Jiu Yuana, because at that time, Lu Yuan's anger was truly at its peak. However, the god of destruction had dug his own grave. If he had not mentioned the battle of the dragon gods, Lu Yuan would not have remembered at that time, and naturally, the matter would have been left unsettled. After all, there was still the goddess of life, and Lu Yuan would have more or less given some face. However, since the god of destruction had said that he had injured Jiu Yuana, Lu Yuan naturally could not pretend that he had not heard. It was reasonable for him to take action and kill the god of destruction. After all, Jiu Yuana was his woman, so he naturally had to avenge her. This was his responsibility and obligation. However, the god of destruction was a real man. Compared to the despicable god of Azura and the shameless god of evil, the god of destruction was much stronger. Lu Yuan's gaze flickered, and the god-slaying spear in his hand was not careless. He directly thrust the spear forward. Admiration was one thing, but this did not stop him from killing. Looking at the god-killing spear, the god of destruction sighed softly. His eyes were filled with relief. It was finally over. No. Seeing Lu Yuan's spear coming down, the goddess of life let out a fierce roar. Her body, which was almost exhausted of divine power, suddenly exploded with a powerful force. The god of destruction's body was forcibly pulled by her. She flipped over and blocked in front of the god of destruction. This was extremely fast, and the sudden change caused Lu Yuan's eyes to widen. He hurriedly stopped, and the god-slaying spear came to an abrupt stop. The spear tip pierced into the goddess of life's body. If Lu Yuan had not retracted it quickly, the goddess of life's body would have been completely pierced by the god-slaying spear. Lu Yuan hurriedly pulled out the god-slaying spear. The goddess of life's body trembled, and the god of destruction hurriedly supported her. "Little green goddess!" The god of destruction and Lu Yuan exclaimed at the same time. Lu Yuan hurriedly stepped forward and placed his right hand on the goddess of life's shoulder, and the power of rules quickly spread out. If it had been an ordinary weapon, it would not have mattered to the goddess of life even if she was injured. The power of life was best at healing, and this kind of injury could be healed in an instant. However, the god-slaying spear was the only exception. The god-slaying spear was now terrifyingly powerful. If one really touched it, they would die. Moreover, when they died, not even a wisp of their soul would be left. It would be impossible for them to be resurrected. Although it was only a small spear tip that had pierced into the goddess of life's body, if it had been delayed for even a moment, the goddess of life would have been completely dead. Therefore, Lu Yuan had immediately stepped forward and used the power of rules to heal her. Otherwise, if he had been a little late, even Lu Yuan would not have been able to do anything. This was the terrifying part of the god-slaying spear. The power of rules entered her body and quickly stopped the invasion of the murderous aura and the demonic aura, saving the goddess of life's life. The goddess of life's face was extremely pale. In just a short while, her body and soul had been severely injured. She looked at the god of destruction lovingly, and then suddenly looked at Lu Yuan. She grabbed Lu Yuan tightly with both hands, and her eyes were full of pleading. Looking at the goddess of life's humble pleading eyes, Lu Yuan's heart softened. He said, "Goddess, why do you have to do this? You almost died. Do you know that? I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of losing little Z. We've been together for hundreds of millions of years, and we've long gotten used to each other's existence. Without him, I really don't know how I can continue living. My life has no meaning. Maybe I'll just go with him. Lu Yuan, if you really want to kill little Z, then kill me first. Then we can sleep together in the underworld." The goddess of life said weakly, but her expression was unusually determined. "Little green," the god of destruction's expression changed, and his eyes were full of pity. The goddess of life's words really moved him. "Goddess." Lu Yuan was silent for a moment, then shook his head and said, "How can I kill you? You're my benefactor. How can I kill you?" The goddess of life had done him a great favor, and she was a truly compassionate and kind god. Killing such a person would make his conscience reproach him. "Then I beg you, can you spare my life? I beg you, I'll kneel to you." The goddess of life begged, her face full of tears. She looked pitiful, and her behavior was extremely humble. For the god of destruction, she really threw away all her dignity. "Little green, there's no need for this. I don't want to live anymore." "You don't have to beg him," the god of destruction couldn't help but say. "Shut up." The goddess of life suddenly flew into a rage and scolded the god of destruction. This was the first time she, who was gentle by nature, had lost her temper so loudly at the god of destruction. "Little green, you." The god of destruction was stunned. The goddess of life's behavior really shocked him. "You only care about yourself, and you don't want to live anymore. Have you ever thought about me? If you die, what should I do? Are you going to leave me to live alone in this world? You can die, but I'll definitely die with you." The goddess of life said loudly, and her questioning words made the god of destruction speechless. "Little green." The god of destruction opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by the goddess of life. Chapter 12:10. Shut up, don't speak, the goddess of life said loudly, stopping the god of destruction from speaking. She knew very well that if she allowed the god of destruction to speak, things would only get worse. Lu Yuan hated gods, and his desire to kill was extremely strong. Only by begging humbly could he have a chance of survival. Lu Yuan was someone who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. He also had his own principles. Although she had not interacted much with Lu Yuan, she could see this clearly. Therefore, she had to grasp this point to save the god of destruction's life. The dignity of the god king was important, but for her husband, she was willing to give up everything. After glaring at the god of destruction, she looked at Lu Yuan again. Her green eyes were full of sincere pleading. She struggled and was about to kneel before Lu Yuan. Enough, goddess, it's really enough. Lu Yuan held the goddess of life. His eyes flashed rapidly, and his heart was full of struggle. It was impossible for the goddess of life to kneel before him. He was not willing and had no right to accept the goddess of life's kowtow. Then promise me, okay? The heavenly life goddess once again grabbed Lu Yuan's hand that was placed on her shoulder. Her beautiful face was covered in tears as she pleaded bitterly. Lu Yuan fell silent again. The goddess of life's pleading moved his heart. He admired the goddess of life's willingness to kneel before him in order to save the god of destruction. Moreover, the goddess of life had done him a favor. The seed of purity that she had left behind had helped him become a god of rules. The crystal of life that she had left behind had helped Hu Lena and Zhu Zhuqing's martial souls evolve and helped Jiu Yuena recover from her injuries. Lu Yuan would naturally remember such kindness. He was not an ungrateful person. He wanted to agree to the goddess of life's request, but this matter involved Jiu Yuena after all. He was in a difficult position. If it had been himself, he would have given the goddess of life face. However, he had to consider Jiu Yuena's thoughts. Seeing Lu Yuan fall silent again, the goddess of life grabbed Lu Yuan's hand and bent her knees to kneel again. Lu Yuan hurriedly supported her again. Looking at the pitiful face of the heavenly life goddess, Lu Yuan couldn't help but sigh. Sigh, forget it. Goddess, don't force me anymore. I promise you that I won't make things difficult for the god of destruction. But whether or not he can survive depends on Na. Lu Yuan said softly and waved in Jiu Yuena's direction. Chihiro Snow and Bibidon immediately rushed over with Jiu Yuena. The goddess of life looked at Jiu Yuena nervously. Jiu Yuena hated the god realm even more, especially since the god of destruction had once injured her. She probably hated the god of destruction to the core. Thinking of this, the heavenly life goddess could not help but feel a chill in her heart. Compared to Lu Yuan, Jiu Yuena was probably even more difficult to talk to. Chihiro Snow and Bibidon were very fast, and it only took a moment for them to bring Jiu Yuena to Lu Yuan's side. Seeing that Jiu Yuena had arrived, Lu Yuan hurriedly expelled all the evil energy of the god-slaying spear from the heavenly life goddess body and went forward to support Jiu Yuena. Jiu Yuena was now the apple of his eye, and he could not afford to hurt her at all. Jiu Yuena glanced at Lu Yuan and leaned slightly on him. You're soft-hearted. Jiu Yuena looked at Lu Yuan and asked calmly. Lu Yuan's conversation with the heavenly life goddess could not be hidden from them. Hearing this, Lu Yuan scratched his head awkwardly and said, we owe the goddess a favor. The life spirit crystal you used was obtained from the goddess. And my clear air spirit seed was also obtained from the goddess. She begged me so bitterly that I really couldn't help her. Lu Yuan smiled bitterly. He was decisive in killing, but he could not bring himself to bite the hand that fed him. Hearing this, Jiu Yuena fell silent for a moment, and her purple eyes flashed. She was thinking, and it was obvious that Lu Yuan's words had touched her. Seeing that Jiu Yuena was thinking, Chihiro Snow glanced at Lu Yuan and said meaningfully, Abuchi, we were just betting on whether you would kill the kind god king. We all thought you wouldn't, but you actually killed her. What a surprise. TSK, you can even kill such a beautiful woman. Chihiro Snow clicked his tongue in wonder, and there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. What else could I do? If I didn't kill her, would you be able to take it? Lu Yuan glanced at Chihiro Snow and said indifferently. Why wouldn't I be able to take it? Anyway, it's not the first time you've been a playboy. Chihiro Snow said softly, as if he didn't care at all. Forget it. If I really took her, the first one to cause trouble would be you. Also, can you stop testing me? I've already killed her. If you still want to play this game with me, be careful of the family law. Lu Yuan stretched out his hand and looked at Chihiro Snow's delicate butt. TSK, I'm not afraid of you. Chihiro Snow clicked his tongue, but there was a smile on his face. She came to Lu Yuan's side and leaned on the other side of Lu Yuan. She was actually very satisfied with Lu Yuan's behavior. If Lu Yuan really took the kind God King, Chihiro Snow would definitely chase after him with the angelic holy sword. Fortunately, Lu Yuan didn't disappoint her. She despised women like the kind God King who threw herself into the arms of her husband's murderer after the death of her husband. She was really willing to do anything in order to survive. She deeply disdained such behavior. Fortunately, the man she fancied was a man of integrity. He was not a picky eater. Looking at Chihiro Snow leaning on his side, Lu Yuan pinched her delicate nose in amusement, his eyes full of affection. Qian Runxue was really able to incite changes in his mood all the time. As long as she stood by his side, his mood would become better. Hey, Abuchi, are we going to kill the god of destruction or not? Chihiro Snow whispered into Lu Yuan's ear. Let's see what Nao wants, Lu Yuan said indifferently. Do you not want to kill her anymore? Since you called us here, it means that you don't want to kill her anymore, Chihiro Snow said softly. You're so smart. Lu Yuan tapped Chihiro Snow's forehead in annoyance. Hee, of course. Who am I? I am the god of 10-winged angels, Chihiro Snow. Chihiro Snow said proudly. Lu Yuan couldn't help but smile. He gently stroked Chihiro Snow's long golden hair. He couldn't help but feel that his arrogant share had become even more arrogant, which made her even more adorable. Moreover, he didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Qian Runxue had become more open. Could it be that during the battle, Qian Runxue was with Jiu Yuana and Bibi Dong, and something happened that he didn't know? Lu Yuan's heart was suddenly filled with curiosity. Chapter 12:11. Caressing Chihiro Snow's delicate face, Lu Yuan tapped his finger lightly, and the power of law spread out, quickly healing Chihiro Snow's remaining injuries. Chihiro Snow would rather self-destruct than be humiliated. This really moved his heart. This was his share. Loyal, pure, stubborn, and unyielding. Although she was a little arrogant, so what? He liked this kind of arrogant Chihiro Snow. He thought it through. Arrogance was Chihiro Snow's specialty. Why did he have to make her change? It was fine as long as she maintained it. Anyway, Chihiro Snow didn't need to be the main wife now. She only needed to act coquettishly in front of him and be pampered. It wasn't a big deal to be a little arrogant. As long as she didn't overdo it and didn't affect their relationship too much, it was fine. However, looking at Chihiro Snow, Bibidon, and Jiu Yuana's relationship was quite harmonious. Lu Yuan could be completely relieved now. Perhaps Chihiro Snow had already thought it through, which was why she was so relaxed, as if she had gotten rid of all her shackles. The power of law spread out, and in just a moment, Chihiro Snow's injuries had been completely healed. Chihiro Snow immediately closed her eyes in comfort. Abuchi. Chihiro Snow called out tenderly, and her whole body directly pressed against Lu Yuan's shoulder. Her watery golden eyes flickered slightly, and there was a strange charm in her purity. And this kind of watery charm in her purity was even more tempting than the attractiveness of sex appeal, making it difficult for people to control themselves. Seeing such a gentle and charming Chihiro Snow, Lu Yuan's heart moved, and he couldn't help but wrap his arms around Chihiro Snow's delicate waist. Share, don't start the fire. Lu Yuan moved closer to Chihiro Snow's ear and whispered. He had been destitute for a few months. He was like a pile of dry firewood that could be ignited at the slightest touch. What's wrong? You can't control yourself? Chihiro Snow's voice was soft as he gently blew into Lu Yuan's ear. What do you think? Don't you know how tempting you are? Pay attention to the occasion. If you really want to seduce me, I'll definitely accompany you when I get back. Lu Yuan said helplessly. TSK, who wants to seduce you? You think too highly of yourself. Chihiro Snow immediately returned to normal. His golden eyes were calm as he spoke. His beautiful face was calm and aloof, and the gentleness from before had completely disappeared. This was how Chihiro Snow should be under normal circumstances. He was noble and cold, with a hint of holiness and purity. Looking at the change in Chihiro Snow, Lu Yuan smiled faintly and didn't say anything. He gently scratched her waist, and Chihiro Snow's delicate body suddenly trembled. In an instant, she broke through, and a beautiful smile appeared on her cold face. Don't try this with me, Lu Yuan said unhappily. Chihiro Snow's noble and aloof appearance was indeed unapproachable, but it was completely useless to him. Qian Renxue puffed up her cheeks and pouted angrily. She looked at Lu Yuan with a pair of golden eyes that were full of rebuke. Lu Yuan smiled and gently pinched her cheeks. His eyes were full of love and affection. Seeing Lu Yuan's expression, Chihiro Snow smiled sweetly. She gently wrapped her arms around Lu Yuan's arm and leaned against him. Lu Yuan patted Chihiro Snow's head lightly, then looked at Jiyu Yuena. After pondering for a long time, he finally made his decision. Naya. Lu Yuan gently called out as he gazed tenderly at Jiyu Yuena. Silver Dragon King. The life goddess also looked straight at Jiyu Yuena with a pleading look on her pretty face. After all, whether the god of destruction lived or died depended on Jiyu Yuena's decision. Abuchi, do you think we should kill him or not? Jiyu Yuena blinked and asked Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan shook his head and said, everything is up to you. I won't interfere with your decision. No matter what you want to do, I'll support you. Is that so? Jiyu Yuena smiled meaningfully and said, but you called me here. Doesn't that mean that you don't want to kill the god of destruction anymore? Although you asked me to think and make a decision, why would I do something that you don't want to do? As soon as she said this, the life goddess was delighted, but Lu Yuan frowned slightly. Naya, I'm really letting you decide. You can do whatever you want and make the decision from your heart. Don't worry about me. I don't want to be a burden to you. Lu Yuan said in a serious tone. I'm serious, too. Jiyu Yuena shook her head and said, I know you too well. Although you kill decisively, deep in your heart, you have your own softness and are extremely sentimental. If I kill the god of destruction, then the life goddess will definitely follow. What you said makes sense. After all, we owe her a debt of gratitude. If she dies, I'm afraid you'll hate yourself for the rest of your life because you'll feel that you've repaid her kindness with ingratitude. I don't want you to be unhappy, I just want you to be happy for the rest of your life. Jiyu Yuena's words were extremely sincere, but they also made Lu Yuan's heart tremble uncontrollably. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? Naya. Lu Yuan couldn't help but hug Jiyu Yuena, his eyes filled with love. Abuchi. Jiyu Yuena smiled softly and gently stroked Lu Yuan's face, her purple eyes shining brightly. She quietly looked at Lu Yuan, then turned her gaze back to the god of destruction. Gratitude must be repaid with gratitude, and vengeance must be repaid with vengeance. We must be clear about this. For the sake of the goddess of life's kindness, I can spare the god of destruction's life. You will still have to accept your own punishment. What punishment is that? The life goddess asked. Hand over your deity positions. Jiyu Yuena said flatly. Hand over the deity positions? The life goddess hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded gently. We're willing to hand over the deity positions. The life goddess didn't care much about the deity positions. It was already a blessing to be able to save the god of destruction's life. Moreover, Lu Yuan wanted to control the heavenly realm. As the old leaders of the gods, they would definitely be purged. There was no way they could keep their deity positions. Abuchi, it's up to you. After receiving the life goddess's answer, Jiyu Yuena nodded and looked at Lu Yuan. Sigh, perhaps this is the best outcome. Lu Yuan sighed softly and withdrew his hand from Jiyu Yuena's waist. He faced the life goddess and the god of destruction and clenched his fist. Strip the deity positions. His words were the law. Lu Yuan directly stripped the life goddess and the god of destruction of their deity positions and put them away. After losing their deity positions, the life goddess and the god of destruction trembled at the same time, their bodies trembling. They were already seriously injured, so they used all their strength to barely maintain their bodies. Moreover, without their deity positions, their strength also decreased greatly. Looking at the situation, their strength was about the level of a first-tier god. Chapter 12:12. Seeing this, Lu Yuan reached out and pointed. Endless white light surged into the goddess of life's body. Her injuries from fusing with the god of creation quickly healed, and her aura also began to rise rapidly. A moment later, her injuries were completely healed, and her aura reached the level of a half-step divine king. Without the divine king's divine throne, this was already the limit she could reach. Although her divine power was still at the divine king level, a god without a divine throne was like water without a source, a tree without roots. At most, her strength could only be on par with a half-step divine king. Moreover, some half-step divine kings with supradivine weapons, or peak first-level gods with supradivine weapons, were stronger than them. However, compared to death, this was a pretty good outcome. The goddess of life felt the changes in her body and was slightly surprised. Now, she had basically recovered to her peak state. The only thing missing was her divine throne. Lu Yuan's methods were truly miraculous to be able to heal the almost irreversible sequelae caused by fusing with the god of creation. The goddess of life supported the god of destruction. Looking at his weak appearance, she could not help but cast a pleading look at Lu Yuan. "Goddess, don't push your luck. I'm not running a charity." Lu Yuan understood what she meant in an instant and immediately said in a bad mood. Hearing this, the goddess of life smiled embarrassedly. Indeed, Lu Yuan was generous enough to let the god of destruction go. Now, it was unrealistic to expect Lu Yuan to heal the god of destruction. However, she did not want to give up. Because this kind of injury could not be healed by anyone other than Lu Yuan. She did not want to see the god of destruction live with such injuries for the rest of his life. "Please heal the god of destruction. Of course, you won't do it for free. If you have anything to do, you can let me do it. I'll do my best to help you. Although I'm not as strong as you, I'm still somewhat useful." The goddess of life looked at Lu Yuan and said sincerely, "Oh." Hearing the goddess of life's words, Lu Yuan was slightly stunned. He stared at the goddess of life, his eyes flashing slightly. Sooner or later, he would enter the divine realm, and with his strength, he would definitely be able to easily conquer the entire divine realm. However, it would inevitably be somewhat inappropriate to suppress them by force. The goddess of life had an extremely high status in the heavenly realm, and her prestige was also considerable. If she could help to persuade and pacify the various gods, perhaps it would be more beneficial for him to control the heavenly realm. After all, he didn't want to kill anyone unless it was absolutely necessary. If he really wiped out the entire god realm, it would be troublesome to find suitable people to ascend to godhood and fill up the god realm. After all, if he could save some effort, why bother? And he had always been a person who hated trouble. Having made up his mind, Lu Yuan no longer hesitated and directly told the goddess of life his request. He could heal the god of destruction, but she had to persuade the other gods to submit to him. The goddess of life agreed without hesitation. This was not only for the sake of the god of destruction, but also for the sake of the other gods in the realm of gods. After all, if they did not submit, they would die. Lu Yuan would not show any mercy. In order to save the lives of those gods, she could only do so. After all, she was the kind-hearted goddess of life who respected life. The two of them hit it off right away and settled the matter completely. God realm. Lu Yuan sat high up on the throne. In front of him were all the gods who knelt down. The diehards were ultimately the minority. Under the persuasion of the goddess of life, coupled with Lu Yuan's terrifying power, many of the gods finally chose to submit. Actually, To them, it didn't make much of a difference whether Lu Yuan or the 5 god kings ruled the god realm. They were all people who were being led. If there was a difference, it would be that Lu Yuan was more powerful. One look at him was enough to make one tremble. His methods were tougher and more awe-inspiring. At the very least, they revered Lu Yuan far more than the 5 god kings. Of course, in addition to these, Lu Yuan did not lack methods of persuasion. There were both hard and soft methods. The combination of hard and soft was the true way to rule. At the same time, he also reassured them. As long as they were honest and did their jobs well, there would be no danger at all. At the same time, there would be rewards, which would reassure them to the greatest extent. It could be said that Lu Yuan had basically conquered the entire god realm on this trip. The only thing he lacked now was his true trusted aides and subordinates. However, this wasn't far away. So long as he took the time to conduct a Divine Lord investiture ceremony, then everything would be easily solved. At that time, the god realm would completely belong to him. The other gods may leave. Sea god and ice god, stay. Lu Yuan waved his hand and said lightly, "Yes, Celestial Emperor." The gods all bowed and then left. "Goddess, you should leave too. I will treat the god of destruction's injuries later." Lu Yuan nodded to the goddess of life beside him and said softly, "Yes, Celestial Emperor." The goddess of life bowed and smiled gently. Then, she nodded slightly to the sea god and ice god and slowly walked out. She was quite satisfied with this trip. The power of the god realm was not damaged too much. Lu Yuan basically did not kill many gods, which was a very good result. After the goddess of life left, only Lu Yuan, the sea god, and the ice god were left. As for Chihiro Snow, Jiu Yuana, and Bibidon, they were arranged to be in an independent hall. After all, Jiu Yuana was pregnant and needed more rest. Lu Yuan's eyes flashed slightly as he stared at the sea god and ice god in front of him. "Celestial Emperor, what a celestial emperor," the sea god said loudly as he stared at Lu Yuan, his eyes full of complex emotions. In just a few years, Lu Yuan had turned from a talented young man into the high and mighty celestial emperor who controlled the god realm. Lu Yuan's method of controlling the god realm was very simple. He just had to release his aura, and that terrifying pressure made all the gods in the god realm kneel down and submit. How simple and crude was that? No one dared to disobey. Those who disobeyed were already dead. The vast god realm was basically filled with smart people. No one was willing to die in vain. Just like that, Lu Yuan took control of the god realm and was even honored as the Celestial Emperor, a celestial emperor who was above the god king. All of this seemed like a dream to the sea god. It was so unbelievable. However, no matter how shocking it was, things had happened so simply. The god realm had completely changed masters. The ruler of the god realm was now Lu Yuan, the celestial emperor Lu Yuan. Chapter 12-13. After hearing the sea god's deep sigh, Lu Yuan looked at him calmly and asked, "Have you thought it through? Do you still want to cause trouble for me? If you really want to die and insist on pestering me, I can send you on your way." The series of events had already depleted Lu Yuan's patience. He had shown mercy time and time again because of his relationship with the sea god. However, if the sea god was still unwilling to let him off, then he couldn't be blamed for not holding back. There was a limit to a person's patience. If he killed the sea god, he wouldn't be able to answer to the Pasisi. However, it wasn't too much trouble. With the feelings that the Pasisi had for him, he was confident that he could persuade the Pasisi. All he had to do was spend more effort to coax him. As for the sea god being the Pasisi's faith, Lu Yuan would change it sooner or later. His women didn't need to believe in anyone, and no one had the right to make them believe in anyone. The simplest way was to increase his strength. This was the most effective way. It had always been the weak who believed in the strong. The strong would never believe in someone weaker than them. When the Pasisi's strength wasn't inferior to the sea god's, or even surpassed her, Lu Yuan didn't have to say anything. This faith would slowly collapse on its own. After all, when the Pasisi was only an ultimate Douluo, the sea god's half-step god-king strength was a miracle to her, and she admired him from the bottom of her heart. However, when the Pasisi became a Tier 1 god, or even a god-king, she would discover that the sea god's strength was only so. He might even be weaker than her. When that happened, would she still believe in the sea god? This was basically impossible. Hence, it wasn't difficult to get rid of the Pasisi's faith. At least for him, who was now the god of laws, it wasn't difficult. On the contrary, it was very simple. Hence, Lu Yuan had given the sea god an ultimatum. He didn't have the energy to continue arguing with the sea god. This was the last chance he was giving the sea god on account of their past relationship. It was up to the sea god whether he could grasp this opportunity. Lu Yuan's calm voice stunned the sea god. He looked at Lu Yuan with a hint of resentment and disappointment in his eyes. However, there were more complicated emotions. Finally, the sea god sighed. He looked a little tired, but there was an inexplicable sense of relief. Looks like you've already made your decision. Very good, looks like you're a smart person. That Azura god is despicable and shameless. If you die for him, then your death won't be worth it. Since you've thought it through, then let's do it this way. Finish the 9 sea god tests as soon as possible and pass down the sea god's divine seat. Then, you can leave the god realm. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. Actually, I feel the same. I feel a little annoyed whenever I see you. You can scram. Stay, ice god. Lu Yuan waved at the sea god, indicating for him to scram. He wasn't surprised by the sea god's choice. It was actually within his expectations. The sea god had been so agitated when he saw the Azura god die. However, after calming down, the sea god naturally made the most reasonable choice. It was human instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The dead were gone. The Azura god was dead. If the sea god really fought to the death for him, he would be a fool. After all, the Azura god's image had collapsed. He wasn't some impartial law enforcement god. He was just a despicable person who attacked from behind. Even if the sea god had a good relationship with him, he couldn't help but feel that it wasn't worth it to sacrifice his life for such a person. After all, although the sea god was loyal, he wasn't stupid. He could still understand such a small matter. The sea god clasped his hands when he heard Lu Yuan's words. He turned around and looked at the ice god with some hesitation in his eyes. I won't hurt her, Lu Yuan said softly when he saw the sea god's hesitation. The sea god paused. He clasped his hands again and turned around to leave. As the heavenly emperor, Lu Yuan's words carried enormous weight. Since he said he wouldn't make things difficult for the ice god, the sea god naturally relaxed and left at ease. The sea god left, leaving only the ice god to look at Lu Yuan. She bit her red lips gently with her pearly white teeth and looked at Lu Yuan with her ice blue eyes. There was a hint of fear in them. Come closer. Lu Yuan looked at the ice god and said indifferently. The ice god's body trembled. She clenched her fists tightly and slowly took a few steps towards Lu Yuan. Her beautiful face was filled with nervousness. To think that the valiant and fearless war goddess of the god realm would have such a timid side now. Lu Yuan couldn't help but find it funny. Come closer. What? Are you afraid that I'll eat you? Lu Yuan teased as he looked at the ice god. The ice god hesitated for a while before taking a few more steps forward. She was almost in front of Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan carefully studied the ice god. Seeing how nervous she was, he smiled faintly and said, I didn't notice before, but you're quite beautiful. You're not much worse than the life goddess. Lu Yuan's praise made the ice god pause slightly. A charming blush appeared on her jade-white face. At the same time, there was some uneasiness in her ice-blue eyes. Why did Lu Yuan praise her for being beautiful? Did he have some feelings for her? If that's really the case, should I agree or not? Lu Yuan was very handsome and terrifyingly powerful. He also loved his woman very much. To be honest, he was her type. However, if she agreed, she might have to be the concubine. She was a little unwilling. Her pride didn't allow her to be the concubine. However, if she didn't agree, would he fly into a rage out of humiliation? Would he break the promise and kill her? This guy was decisive. It wasn't impossible. The ice god's expression changed. The more she thought about it, the more nervous she became. Should she stick to her pride and be killed? Or should she put down her pride and be the concubine? The ice god was a little conflicted. She didn't want to be the concubine, but she didn't want to die either. The battle of the god realm was over, and the god realm had changed owners. It wouldn't be worth it to die now. Seeing the ice god's expression change, Lu Yuan was a little curious. What was this woman thinking? He would never have thought that the ice god would imagine so many things just because of his praise. It had to be said that the ice god's imagination was extraordinarily rich. Hey! Lu Yuan called softly. Come back to your senses. I have something to say to you. Hearing Lu Yuan's call, the ice god seemed to wake up from a dream. She stared at Lu Yuan with her ice blue eyes, and a faint blush appeared on her face. What were you thinking just now? Lu Yuan couldn't help but ask. To be honest, he was indeed very curious about the ice god's thoughts. Chapter 12:14. I wasn't thinking about anything, the ice god said softly. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. How could she possibly voice out her shameful thoughts? She was actually very thin-skinned. Although she used to be valiant and looked like a war goddess, she was actually very innocent. She had spent all her time on cultivation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to cultivate to the spear god realm and become the strongest god below the sea god realm. She had never been involved in the affairs between men and women and could be said to be poor in this aspect. Because of this, she was easily embarrassed. However, Lu Yuan's praise was enough to make her blush. If it had been another woman, she would have accepted it calmly. At most, she would have pretended to be shy, which was completely different from the ice god's true shyness. Nothing. Lu Yuan's mouth twitched as he looked at her strangely. Did this woman take him for a fool? She was already in a daze, but she hadn't thought of anything. Lu Yuan shook his head slightly. However, since the ice god didn't want to talk about it, Lu Yuan didn't bother to ask. He had asked the ice god to stay because he had important matters to discuss. He couldn't be bothered with these trivial matters. Do you know why I asked you to stay? Lu Yuan stood up and looked at her condescendingly. I don't know, the ice god said softly as she shook her head. She suspected that Lu Yuan had ulterior motives for asking her to stay, but she didn't dare to say it out loud. If Lu Yuan got angry and forced himself on her, the consequences would be. The ice god shook her head and didn't dare to think about it anymore. However, after taking a closer look at Lu Yuan, she couldn't help but have a good impression of him. Lu Yuan was indeed very handsome. He was so handsome that it was tragic and refreshing. He gave her a feeling that she had never felt before. It was as if he was really different from the men she had met before. It was a pity that Lu Yuan already had a wife. Otherwise, she would have reluctantly agreed to his request. After all, following Lu Yuan wasn't a bad thing. On the contrary, it was a little profitable. But there were no IFS, and there were no IFS. Lu Yuan already had several wives. Regarding this point, she was still a little concerned. Actually, I'm keeping you because I need your help with something, Lu Yuan said calmly as he looked at the ice goddess. You need my help. What's the matter? The ice god asked in a low voice. It's not a big deal, but only you can help, Lu Yuan said. Ah. The ice god was shocked and became even more determined. She gripped the corner of her clothes tightly with both hands and bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth. After hesitating for a while, she asked tentatively, Can I refuse? Refuse? Lu Yuan's double pupils flashed slightly as he said, This matter is a bit important to me. You'd better not refuse. Hearing Lu Yuan's words, the ice god's heart skipped a beat. Her pretty face paled. She struggled to raise her head and looked at Lu Yuan. Are you trying to force me? You already have so many beautiful wives. Why do you still want to force me? The ice god clenched her fists and gathered her courage. There was some stubbornness in her icy blue eyes, as well as a faint disappointment. In the end, Lu Yuan still wanted to use force. Not long ago, Lu Yuan's refusal of the kind God King had earned her admiration, but now, he was actually forcing her. Perhaps Lu Yuan had only rejected the kind God King because she had been touched by someone else and he disliked it, so he rejected her. Now, it seemed that he was a complete lecher. No matter how good he was to his women, he couldn't change this nature. The ice god thought to herself. Her impression of Lu Yuan plummeted. She hated men who forced women in this aspect the most. They were no better than those beasts. Bah! The ice god couldn't help but curse in her heart. What are you talking about? What does it have to do with you how many wives I have? Hearing the ice god's words, Lu Yuan was dumbfounded. He saw the stubbornness and unyielding in the ice god's eyes. He paused for a while before slowly coming to his senses. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Ice god, you can't be thinking that I covet your beauty and want to force you to submit, right? Lu Yuan looked at the ice god strangely. This woman really knew how to think. Moreover, her confidence was extraordinarily strong. She was so sure that he would fall for her and force her to do it. This was really imaginative. He had never forced a woman in his life, and he didn't care about it. The ice god's suspicion was definitely the biggest slander he had ever suffered in his life. There were plenty of women who liked him. Did he need to force them? Isn't that so? Don't you want to force me to be your woman by keeping me here? If I don't agree, are you going to kill me? Lu Yuan, I really misjudged you. The ice god was furious. She couldn't help but scold him loudly. Regardless of whether he agreed in the end, she had to satisfy her mouth first. In her opinion, since Lu Yuan coveted her beauty, she should be safe until the last moment. Therefore, scolding him a little shouldn't be a problem. It had to be said that the ice god was indeed magnanimous. On the one hand, she was a little afraid of death, but when she was angry, she was also very unreasonable. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't do what she did. Hearing the ice god's words, Lu Yuan was even more speechless. He looked at the ice god as if he was looking at an idiot. I say, ice god, have you misunderstood something? From the beginning to the end, have I ever expressed the idea of forcing you to be my woman? To be honest, I have many women. I don't lack women. In terms of relationships, I've never forced any woman, let alone forced her. I'm keeping you here because I want to borrow your deity position. I promised someone that I would give her a surprise after she revives. The ice god's deity position is very suitable for her. How did you think of that? I'm really curious, Lu Yuan said softly. His double pupils were filled with strange colors. What did you say? Lu Yuan's words shocked the ice god. Her unyielding anger directly dissipated in her heart. She looked at Lu Yuan with a dull expression. You just want to borrow my deity position? What else? Lu Yuan asked, somewhat amused. This. Hearing this, the ice god was embarrassed. Could it be that she had misunderstood? She thought about it carefully. Lu Yuan had never expressed the idea of taking her as a woman. Everything was just her own imagination. Hey, interesting. You're the first woman to think this way in so many years. Tell me, why do you think this way, or did I make you misunderstand? Lu Yuan walked in front of the ice god, lowered his head, and looked at her quietly. The ice god couldn't help but shrink her head. Now that she saw Lu Yuan, she felt ashamed. How embarrassing. Chapter 12:15. Hey, why are you so quiet? I'm asking you a question. Lu Yuan couldn't help but smile when he saw the ice god's awkward expression. This woman was so good at associating things and making such a blunder. How interesting. What? The ice god bit her lip and looked up at Lu Yuan before quickly lowering her head again. She was so embarrassed that her scalp was numb. She just wanted to find a hole to crawl into. In particular, Lu Yuan's teasing gaze made her feel uncomfortable all over. What? Now you know how to be embarrassed? Raise your head. Lu Yuan gently pinched the ice god's chin and raised her head slightly. He couldn't help but smile when he saw the ice god's flushed cheeks. This was the first time in many years that he had experienced something like this. It was really interesting. Weren't you scolding me with a righteous expression just now? Why are you acting like a quail now? Can't you speak? Lu Yuan looked directly into the ice god's beautiful ice-blue eyes and couldn't help but chuckle softly. I was wrong. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. The ice god closed her eyes and mumbled an apology in a low voice. Heh, your apology isn't sincere at all. Open your eyes and look at me. Lu Yuan said indifferently. This. The ice god bit her lip and looked hesitant. After hesitating for a while, she opened her eyes and looked at Lu Yuan with her ice-blue eyes. There was fear in her eyes and her pretty face was pink. Even her delicate earlobes were completely red. I'm sorry. The ice god mustered up her courage and used all her strength to suppress the shyness and embarrassment in her heart. Her red lips began to tremble slightly. All right, there's no need to say any more. That's it. Just as the ice god was about to open her mouth, Lu Yuan interrupted her. He knew that the ice god was thin-skinned, so he was just teasing her. He wasn't really going to make the ice god apologize. Otherwise, with the ice god's naivety and shyness, she would probably be ashamed for the entire day. Let's get down to business. Lu Yuan changed the topic. Otherwise, the ice goddess would be too embarrassed to face anyone if they continued this topic. Serious business? The ice goddess was stunned. Her attention was diverted, and the blush on her face faded a little. Yes. Lu Yuan withdrew his hand that was lifting the ice god's chin. With his hands behind his back, he paced lightly and said, I want to borrow your position as the ice god. What do you think? Hearing this, the ice god paused for a moment. She lowered her eyes and clenched her fists tightly. After a long while, she whispered, I don't want to leave the god realm. She was different from the sea god. The sea god wanted freedom, but she wanted to stay in the god realm. Furthermore, she was even more passionate about strength. Her greatest wish in this lifetime was to break through to the god king realm. Clearly, her chances of breaking through in the divine realm would be higher. I didn't ask you to leave the god realm. Lu Yuan turned around and looked at the ice goddess. He said, I can't wait to welcome a god like you. Why would I chase you away? But I can't stay in the god realm without the position of the ice goddess whispered as she glanced at Lu Yuan. Ha. Hearing this, Lu Yuan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and chuckle. He looked at the ice goddess with a faint smile and said, There's no rule in the god realm that says a god who has lost his position can't stay in the god realm. The rule is that only gods who have inherited their position can leave the god realm. I'm guessing that you don't want to lose your position and the chance to break through to a higher realm. Yes and no? Lu Yuan asked indifferently. Hearing this, the ice goddess fell silent and didn't say anything. Sigh, is this how you see me? Do I look like the kind of person who takes advantage of others? Lu Yuan walked to the side of the ice goddess and looked at her quietly. Since I've taken your position as the ice goddess, I'll naturally give you a better one. I won't let you lose out. Lu Yuan couldn't help but pinch the ice goddess' cheeks hard. The ice goddess looked at him bitterly in pain. Lu Yuan smiled faintly and waved his hand. A glowing godhead appeared in his hand. This is the godhead of the spear god that I created. If you integrate with it, you can become the spear god. This godhead is also a first-class godhead. It's no worse than your position as the ice goddess. Moreover, the spear god belongs to the category of god of war. His attack power is extremely strong. Among the gods of the same level, his combat power will definitely be stronger. If you become the spear god, you'll be stronger than you are now. Moreover, you've already comprehended the spear god realm. You're extremely compatible with the position of the spear god. How about it? Are you willing to exchange with me now? Lu Yuan asked softly. The ice goddess looked at the godhead of the spear god in Lu Yuan's hand in surprise. She asked in surprise, You said this is the godhead that you created. You can create a godhead? Of course. It's not difficult. I still have the godhead of the sword god, the godhead of the saber god, and so on. I'm the emperor of heaven who controls the rules. Creating a few godheads is a piece of cake for me. Lu Yuan smiled gently. He was the god of rules. Using the power of rules, condensing some of the origin of Spear Dao and the origin of Sword Dao to create a godhead was really not difficult. Then why don't you create another ice goddess godhead? The ice goddess asked curiously. Hearing this, Lu Yuan looked at the ice goddess quietly as if he was looking at a fool. Have you seen two identical godheads appear at the same time? Lu Yuan said in annoyance. Only one of the same godhead can appear. I can only create godheads that haven't appeared before. I can't create godheads that have already appeared. A godhead represented a kind of authority, and such authority was unique. The authority could be dispersed, included, or even included. However, the same type of authority couldn't have two identical controllers. For example, the water god controlled all the water in the world. In theory, ice and sea were variations and manifestations of water. They were all under the water god's control. However, in reality, the authority was dispersed. The water god only controlled the water of the continent and the water of the air. The sea was controlled by the sea god, and the ice was controlled by the ice goddess. This was a kind of dispersion of authority. The authorities included the ice goddess and the ice goddess. The ice goddess controlled the energy of ice and snow. This was only a small part of the ice goddess authority. The ice goddess authority included the ice goddess authority. The ice goddess authority could also extend to the ice goddess, the extreme ice goddess, and so on. However, there could only be one ice goddess. This was the uniqueness. Although Lu Yuan could create a godhead, the ice goddess position already existed. She was born to control all the ice energy in the world. It was impossible for Lu Yuan to create another ice goddess position. Chapter 12:16. The power of the natural order was extremely mysterious, but because it was the power of the natural order, it also had to abide by certain laws and rules. The only thing that could restrain the power of the natural order was the natural order itself. Lu Yuan, who controlled the natural order, was omnipotent in certain aspects, but the premise was that he couldn't violate the laws of the universe's origin. This was an absolute law that couldn't be changed. Otherwise, it would cause turbulence in the universe's origin, cause everything to collapse, the natural order to become chaotic, and the entire world would be destroyed. Otherwise, Lu Yuan wouldn't have personally come to the ice god to exchange the deity position with her. It was because the ice god's deity position was unique and suited the snow emperor that Lu Yuan had no choice but to come. He couldn't think of a more suitable deity position for the snow emperor than the ice god. Hearing Lu Yuan's explanation, the ice god came to a realization. She looked at Lu Yuan's gaze as if he was looking at an idiot and smiled embarrassedly. She was being silly again. Sometimes, I really wonder how you cultivated to your current level. It's really hard to explain your brain. Lu Yuan shook his head and sighed softly. The ice god's face darkened when she heard Lu Yuan's evaluation. If it was someone else who dared to say that to her, she would have already gone berserk. She wasn't stupid. She was just a little naive and put all her energy into cultivation. In the end, Lu Yuan actually said that her brain wasn't good. That was really too much. Are you still exchanging or not? If not, I'm leaving. The ice god pouted and turned to leave. After spending some time together, she found that Lu Yuan was quite approachable. Some of the fear in her heart gradually dissipated and she began to let go. Why are you in such a hurry? Lu Yuan grabbed the ice god and looked at her angry expression. He smiled faintly and said, "Why? You're not convinced that I called you stupid? I wouldn't dare. You're the heavenly emperor," the ice god said faintly. "Haha, it's you." Lu Yuan shook his head and said in amusement. After a while, Lu Yuan's expression turned serious and he said seriously, "Then let's begin. Get ready." "Yes." Seeing that Lu Yuan was serious, the ice goddess nodded and began to prepare. Her icy blue eyes stared at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan stretched out his right hand and clenched it gently. He then spat out 4 words, "Divine seat deprivation." With Lu Yuan's words, the ice goddess trembled violently. An icy blue godhead flew out of her body and was caught by Lu Yuan. After losing her godhead, the ice god's aura plummeted. She was not much stronger than a second-level god with a divine throne. Divine position fusion. Lu Yuan pointed again, and a dazzling spear-shaped divine persona flew out and fused with the ice goddess. With the fusion of the godly tablet, the ice god's aura suddenly rose. It returned to its original state in an instant. After returning to its original state, the ice god's aura continued to rise. However, it was stuck at a bottleneck and could not go any further. Break for me. The ice goddess clenched her fists and attacked fiercely. Her aura was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. The bottleneck was in danger, but she was still one step away. She was somewhat powerless. Fine, I'll help you again. Lu Yuan stretched out his finger and an endless amount of immortal qi turned into the purest energy and poured into the ice goddess's body. Suddenly, the sound of shackles being torn apart could be heard from the ice goddess's body. Her aura suddenly rose again, and she stood in a new realm. Half-step divine king realm, not bad. Looking at the 8 golden halos above the ice goddess head, Lu Yuan nodded. At the god realm, the level of cultivation was measured by the golden halos above the head. A heavenly official only had the most basic divine halos. A third-level god had 3 halos, a second-level god had 5, a first-level god had 7, and a divine king had 9. As for the 8 halos, it was the symbol of a half-step divine king realm. As for Lu Yuan, he was an exception. His realm could not be measured by the standards of the god realm. He was at the universe level, which was much higher than the god realm. After breaking through to the half-step divine king realm, the ice goddess's strength was much stronger. Compared to a peak first-level god, she was much stronger. The ice goddess clenched her fists, and a satisfied smile appeared on her face. After breaking through to the half-step divine king realm, she was confident that she could defeat the sea goddess. Compared to the ice goddess godhood, the spear god godhood's attack power was much stronger. Thank you, Lu Yuan. Thank you for helping me break through to the half-step divine king realm. The ice goddess looked at Lu Yuan, and her eyes were filled with gratitude. No need to thank me. It was nothing. I also got what I wanted. Shaking the ice goddess godhood in his hand, Lu Yuan kept it in his star ring. No, I still have to thank you. Your little effort was a great help to me. The ice goddess shook her head and said with determination. The exchange of divine positions might be equivalent, but Lu Yuan helped her break through to the half-step divine king realm. This was a great favor. She had always been clear about kindness and hatred. She would always repay kindness. She would always remember Lu Yuan's kindness in her heart. Do you have anything you need me to do? I will definitely do it for you. The ice goddess said with a serious face. Well, since you asked so sincerely, I can't turn you down. I do have something that I need your help with. Looking at the ice goddess' serious face, Lu Yuan couldn't help but say softly. What is it? Just say it. As long as it doesn't go against my morals and principles, I will do it for you. The ice goddess said. Okay, then I'll say it. Lu Yuan said. Okay, say it. The ice goddess pricked up her ears and said seriously. You don't have the ice goddess godhood anymore. Instead, you fused with the spear god godhood and became the spear god. It's not appropriate to call you the ice goddess anymore. However, calling you the spear god sounds weird. Can you tell me your name? That's it. Hearing Lu Yuan's words, the ice goddess was stunned. The so-called thing was to ask for her name. That's it. What else do you think it is? Lu Yuan smiled faintly. Now that he had settled everything, there was nothing else that he needed the ice goddess help with. Wasn't it just asking for her name? If you don't mind, tell me. Lu Yuan said with a smile. Of course I don't mind. My name is Lung Ningxuang. The ice goddess said generously. Lung Ningxuang? Good name. Lu Yuan nodded. With a wave of his right hand, a gorgeous ice blue spear appeared in his hand and he threw it to the ice goddess. Ice goddess spear? You're giving it back to me? The ice goddess looked at Lu Yuan in surprise. Of course. She's not good at using spears, so it's useless for me to keep it. I might as well return it to you. Furthermore, I can't create the ice goddess godhood, but an ice attribute super divine weapon is not a problem. Lu Yuan patted the ice goddess' shoulder and smiled faintly before turning to leave. Goodbye, Leng Ningxuang. Seeing Lu Yuan's tall figure leave with his hands behind his back, the ice goddess gripped the ice goddess spear in her hand and bit her red lips. A complicated look appeared in the depths of her eyes. Chapter 12:17. The God King's Palace. This used to be the residence of the evil and kind God Kings. Now, it was the temporary residence of Lu Yuan, Chihiro Snow, and the others in the God realm. Lu Yuan had just ascended to the position of Heavenly Emperor, so his palace was still under construction. Although it was something that could be settled with a simple wave of his hand, this was the effect that was needed sometimes. Having a god's palace built by the gods of the God realm was better than having Lu Yuan build it himself. The God palace of the Heavenly Emperor needed to be built by the gods to express their respect and submission. Therefore, Lu Yuan temporarily requisitioned the evil and kind God King's God palaces. Their God palaces were the highest-level God palaces in the God realm, so it was a good place to go. There were many God officials outside the God palaces. God officials who were considered peerless powerhouses on the Douluo continent were considered the lowest level in the God realm. These God officials were the servants and guards who served Lu Yuan and the others. When they saw Lu Yuan return, they immediately knelt down to greet him. Lu Yuan wasn't surprised at all. After so many years, he was already used to the feeling of having people kneel down to him, so he didn't feel anything at all. As he walked forward, Lu Yuan directly walked into the God Palace. The God Palace was grand and majestic, and the furnishings were noble and elegant. Bibidon and Jiu Yuana were sitting on two thrones high above, while Chihiro Snow stood beside Jiu Yuana and looked after her. Below them, a woman in a green godly robe was kneeling on the ground. Her entire body was trembling, and her eyes were filled with fear. This woman's appearance was rather ugly and ferocious. Her entire body emitted a kind of evil and filthy aura, causing people to unconsciously feel a sense of disgust. Bibidon, who was sitting on the throne, stared straight at this woman. Her pink eyes were filled with hatred. What, you still haven't dealt with her? Lu Yuan walked over slowly. His gaze swept across this woman, and then stopped on Bibidon and the others. He smiled faintly. Abuchi, you're back. Seeing Lu Yuan's figure, Bibidon, Jiu Yuana, and Chihiro Snow's eyes lit up at the same time, and they called out softly. Yes, I'm back. Those fellows have all submitted to us. The God realm now belongs to us. Lu Yuan chuckled. His figure flashed, and he appeared beside Bibidon and the other two women. Hearing this, the three women were ecstatic and revealed beautiful smiles. Their man had once again achieved a magnificent feat, conquering the divine realm. This was countless times better than unifying the entire Douluo continent. I knew this wouldn't be a problem for you. Jiu Yuana smiled gently as she looked at Lu Yuan with eyes full of affection. Lu Yuan smiled and took 2 steps forward. He grabbed her jade-like hand and asked with concern, "Are you okay now?" "Do you feel uncomfortable?" "No, I'm fine. You don't have to worry too much. I'm not that weak." Jiu Yuana shook her head and said softly, "Aren't you pregnant? It's better to be careful." Lu Yuan caressed her cheek, his tone gentle and calm. Jiu Yuana smiled sweetly and didn't say anything. She quietly enjoyed Lu Yuan's caress. Lu Yuan gently pinched her delicate cheek again, turned around, looked at Bibidon, and said, "Dong you can end her now. There's no need to torture her too much. Just vent the resentment in your heart, but don't let resentment affect your mind. The past is the past. Now you still have me. I will always be by your side." Lu Yuan caressed Bibidon's long hair and said softly, "Okay, then help me. I can't kill her now." Bibidon said softly. She had tortured the Rakshasa deity for a long time, and she had vented the anger in her heart. However, Although the Rakshasa deity's divine power was sealed, she was still a genuine first-level god, and Bibidon was only a false god. The difference between a god and a mortal was still very big. She couldn't kill the Rakshasa deity. After all, there was only one Lu Yuan. Generally speaking, only a god could kill a god. Especially a god with a divine position. Such a god could only be killed by a god under normal circumstances. Even if a god could seriously injure a god, he couldn't kill him. This was a huge gap caused by the level of life. It wasn't that there weren't any who could cross this gap, but there were very, very few, so few that it almost didn't exist. Okay, then I'll help you take care of her, Lu Yuan said faintly. He glanced at the Rakshasa deity below and pointed directly at her in horror. Suddenly, the Rakshasa deity's body quickly dissipated until it completely turned into nothingness, leaving only a godhood spinning around. First-level Rakshasa deity, fallen. Casually putting away the Rakshasa deity's godhood, Lu Yuan looked at Bibidon. At this moment, Bibidon's eyes flashed with a hint of relief. The Rakshasa deity was her only obsession. Now that her obsession was gone and the knot in her heart was untied, she suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. Abuchi, thank you, Bibidon said sincerely. Thank you. Do we need to say this between us? What should you call me? Hearing Bibidon's thanks, Lu Yuan's hand that was stroking her long hair paused. His right hand gently lifted Bibidon's chin and asked faintly. Being teased by Lu Yuan in front of Chihiro Snow and Jiu Yuena, Bibidon's pretty face blushed slightly, and her pink eyes flashed with a faint pleading look. But Lu Yuan acted as if he didn't see it at all and asked again, Dong what should you call me? Bibidon looked at Lu Yuan reproachfully. Seeing that he still had an unforgiving look, she bit her red lips and whispered, husband. What? I didn't hear you. Lu Yuan deliberately smiled. Husband. Bibidon's voice rose by 3 notches, and her eyes that looked at Lu Yuan carried a bit of anger. Haha, that's my good wife. Lu Yuan picked up Bibidon, then sat on the throne and put Bibidon on his lap. He gently pinched Bibidon's delicate face and said, remember, don't say thank you in the future, or next time I'll spank you directly. You're still so estranged with me. Lu Yuan wrapped his arm around Bibidon's waist and gave her a quick peck on the lips as he spoke with a faint smile. Humph. Bibidon snorted, and her face was slightly red. Being hugged and kissed so intimately by Lu Yuan in front of Jiu Yuena and Chihiro Snow, she was always a bit shy. She was dignified and elegant, natural and unrestrained, quiet and gentle, and her temperament was refined. She dared to love and hate, but her only flaw was that she was a bit shy. She could play and be intimate with Lu Yuan in all kinds of ways, but she couldn't accept the presence of others, otherwise she would be very shy. And Chihiro Snow was a bit similar in this aspect. Jiu Yuena, on the other hand, didn't care about the gazes of others. She was only happy that Lu Yuan was willing to be intimate with her. Chapter 12-18. Of course, Ningrongrong was also quite similar to Jiu Yuena. She also didn't care about what others thought of her, and she loved being close to Lu Yuan. In contrast with Jiu Yuena was very generous and didn't care about what others thought of her, while Ningrongrong was completely heartless and didn't care about what others thought of her. As for Zhu Zhuqing and Hulena was also very bold, and she was very clingy. As long as Lu Yuan was around, she would always be by Lu Yuan's side. Zhu Zhuqing was a little shy, and she was also very thin-skinned. All in all, among Lu Yuan's 6 women, 3 of them were more bold and open, while the other 3 were more reserved and shy. However, all of them were slightly different, and they all had their own advantages. Lu Yuan held Bibidon in his arms and gently stroked her long purple hair with his right hand. He couldn't help but turn to Jiu Yuena and Chihiro Snow. Enea, Cher, do you want to stay in the Divine Realm or return to the Douluo continent? Lu Yuan asked in a soft voice. He had come to the Divine Realm to conquer it, and now that he had done so, he still wanted to return to the Douluo continent. After all, Zhu Zhuqing, Hulena, and the others were still waiting for him on the Douluo continent. Furthermore, There were still some things that he had to do on the Douluo continent. It wouldn't be too late for him to return to the divine realm after he had taken care of everything on the Douluo continent. However, he didn't know what Chihiro Snow and the others were thinking. If they wanted to stay in the divine realm, Lu Yuan wouldn't object. After all, the divine realm was indeed more suitable for cultivation, and one day in the divine realm was equivalent to 1 year on the Douluo continent. They wouldn't be able to wait for long before Lu Yuan returned. As such, it wouldn't be an issue whether they left or not. I naturally have to return to the Douluo continent. Don't forget what you promised me, Jiu Yuana said in a seductive voice. What did I promise you? Lu Yuan smiled and feigned a perplexed look. You promised to help me revive the dragons in the Dragon Valley. What, you're not going to go back on your word, are you? Do you think I won't bully your son? Jiu Yuana placed her right hand on her stomach and threatened in a menacing manner. Hiss, what a vicious threat. You scared me to death. My child, how did you end up with such a vicious mother? You haven't even been born and she already wants to bully you. Lu Yuan said with a pained expression. His words were full of complaints about Jiu Yuana's vicious actions. Little Yuan, you, fut. Seeing Lu Yuan's funny look, Jiu Yuana couldn't help but laugh. She couldn't help but glare at Lu Yuan fiercely. This bad guy only knows how to fool around. People who didn't know would think that Jiu Yuana was a heinous person who would even harm her own child. Bibi Dong and Chen Renxue couldn't help but smile, the corners of their mouths revealing a faint smile. While they were smiling, they were also filled with envy. They also wanted a child. As they thought about this, they couldn't help but look at Lu Yuan with resentment in their eyes. You want a child? Lu Yuan asked with a faint smile. He could naturally tell what Bibidon and Chihiro Snow were trying to say. The envy in their eyes couldn't be faked. What do you think? Bibidon and Chihiro Snow said in unison. The resentment in their eyes became even more pronounced. Then we have to make a decision before we can start our grand plan. Cher, you still haven't answered my question, Lu Yuan said in a soft voice. Do you still need to ask me? Of course I'm going back with you. What's so interesting about the divine realm? Chihiro Snow said in an indifferent voice. Very good, then it's decided. Let's return to the Douluo continent together. However, before we return, Cher, use the immortal spiritual energy to cleanse yourself and raise your powers to the peak. After that, absorb it and become a godly king. Lu Yuan casually waved his hand, and a white crystal that was the size of 2 palms floated above his palm. It exuded rich and pure light power. Angel God Crystal. Chihiro Snow's eyes lit up. He immediately recognized it. This is the fallen crystal that Lucifer left behind after his death. I purified it and turned it into an angel God crystal. After you've been cleansed by the immortal spiritual energy, you should be able to become a half-step godly king. With this angel God crystal, forming 12 wings and becoming a godly king won't be a problem. After you become a godly king, I'll help you revive the Snow Emperor and the others. They can indeed be revived. Furthermore, after you become a godly king, they'll benefit even more from being revived. Lu Yuan said in a gentle voice as he tossed the angel God crystal over. Chihiro Snow subconsciously caught the angel God crystal and gently caressed it. He suddenly asked, how are you going to deal with the matter between you and the Snow Emperor? Now that the matter has been settled, you can't run away anymore. She and the Snow Emperor had been together for quite some time. She had long acknowledged the Snow Emperor in her heart. Furthermore, the Snow Emperor was infatuated with Lu Yuan. She naturally didn't want to see Lu Yuan hurt the Snow Emperor. We'll talk about the matter with the Snow Emperor later. Furthermore, this is my matter. I know what I'm doing. You should take care of yourself first. Lu Yuan said indifferently. But you promised me that I'll have the final say on the matter of you looking for someone else. You said it yourself. You won't go back on your words, right? Chihiro Snow said with a smile. I won't go back on my words. However, the matter between the Snow Emperor and I should be discussed with her personally. You can only decide whether you want me to accept her in the end. However, whether I want to accept her or not is my business. It's none of your business. But don't worry, I won't hurt her. Lu Yuan shook his head and said indifferently, "All right, remember what you said. I'll go cultivate first." Hearing this, Chihiro Snow paused for a moment. Then, he nodded at Lu Yuan. Holding the angel god crystal, he walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. He began to absorb the celestial qi to refine his body. Seeing this, Lu Yuan stretched out his finger and an endless amount of immortal qi flowed into Qian Renshue's body, giving her the necessary baptism before she became a god. Only after the baptism would Chihiro Snow be able to fully control all the energy contained in the deity position. At the same time, he could truly unleash all his potential. As the celestial qi poured in quickly, Chihiro Snow's aura continued to rise. At this speed, Chihiro Snow's strength would break through to the half-step divine king realm in at most an hour. As Chihiro Snow was slowly breaking through, Lu Yuan slowly retracted his gaze and looked at Bibidon in his arms. "Abuchi, you really don't want to accept the Snow Emperor?" Bibidon asked. She could tell that Lu Yuan didn't want to settle this matter immediately. "It's not that I don't want to accept her. I just want to communicate with the Snow Emperor and make a decision. Feelings are a matter between two people. I can't make a decision just because of Cher's words. Do you understand? After all, Cher isn't the Snow Emperor. This matter can't be replaced by others. Even if you want to ask me, you have to ask the Snow Emperor personally. However, speaking of which, the Snow Emperor is really quite beautiful." As Lu Yuan spoke, his tone suddenly changed and he said with a smile. Chapter 12:19. Hearing this, Bibidon couldn't help but look at Lu Yuan in amusement. He spoke so righteously before, but as soon as this sentence came out, he immediately revealed his true colors. However, after listening to Lu Yuan's meaning, Bibidon's heart was somewhat assured. After all, Lu Yuan was not a cold-hearted person, nor was he a heartless man. Moreover, now that there was no pressure, the Snow Emperor's chances were actually quite high. It was just that Lu Yuan had already decided everything himself and didn't like them to interfere. After all, although they were all Lu Yuan's women, in this aspect, Lu Yuan also didn't like them to point fingers. They could only persuade or remind Lu Yuan. The one who really had to make the decision was still Lu Yuan himself. After thinking about this, Bibidon smiled. Her smile was sweet and gentle. She gently stroked Lu Yuan's face and said, "Since you already have your own plans, then I won't say anything more. You can decide on your own. Snow Emperor is a good girl, and she gets along well with us. It's fine if you like her. After all, you are so outstanding. It's normal for girls to like you. I only have one request. You are not allowed to bring back that kind of indecent woman. I don't like indecent women either." Rubbing Bibidon's head, Lu Yuan said with a smile. He wasn't a man who could take a fancy to any woman. He was at least a celestial emperor now. If he wanted to find someone, he had to find a better one. Chimph, who knows? You won't now, but it's inevitable that you won't be confused sometimes. You can find a girlfriend, but they must be approved by us. Moreover, you already have 6 of us. Pay attention to the number of people. Don't find too many, okay? Bibidon said with a snort. "How many do you mean by too many? 5 or 6? Lu Yuan asked tentatively. "You still want 5 or 6? Hearing this, Bibidon opened her eyes wide. She directly raised her head and bit Lu Yuan's ear. Lu Yuan cooperated and let out a scream. HMPH, Snow Emperor and Pasisi. Just the 2 of them. It's impossible for them to have other women. Sure enough, I should be strict and decisive when talking to you. You want 5 or 6? Is your heart really that big?" Bibidon snorted, her pair of pink eyes glaring at Lu Yuan. She said that there couldn't be too many people, but this guy actually wanted 5 or 6. Sure enough, it was better to directly seal it. Other than Snow Emperor and Pasisi, he couldn't bring anyone else back. Bibidon's what she thought. "I'm just joking. Don't be angry, Don't be angry. Lu Yuan gently patted Bibidon's back and comforted her in a low voice. He was indeed just joking. How could he find 5 or 6 more? He wasn't that greedy. Generally speaking, he was more passive when it came to relationships. Unless he liked it so much that he couldn't bear to give it up, he wouldn't take the initiative to pursue. For so many years, the only ones who took the initiative to pursue were Chihiro Snow and Bibidon. One was his first love, the other was his obsession. Other than that, the others were just throwing themselves at him. He had never thought about how many girlfriends he would find, nor did he say that he would find 7 or 8. The reason why he had reached this point could be said to be the arrangement of fate. He didn't force it. After all, they were deeply in love with him, and he was tempted. It was only natural for them to be together. All right, Dong-er. I was wrong. I apologize. Don't be angry. Lu Yuan kissed Bibidon's face and said in a gentle tone. Bibidon snorted again, but her expression had already eased. Since Lu Yuan had admitted his mistake, she naturally wouldn't harp on it. She also knew that Lu Yuan wouldn't really find 5 or 6 women at once. She just wanted to show her attitude and give Lu Yuan a heads up. Lu Yuan indeed had enough women. If the Snow Emperor and Pasisi were included, there would be 8. This was already enough. Although Lu Yuan was the Celestial Emperor and it was normal for him to have 3 or 4 wives, she couldn't really allow Lu Yuan to have 3,000 beauties. Everyone had possessiveness, and so did she. Although Lu Yuan was too outstanding and she couldn't monopolize Lu Yuan, she definitely hoped that fewer people would share Lu Yuan with her. She was already magnanimous to allow Lu Yuan to bring back the Snow Emperor and Pasisi. She couldn't let Lu Yuan fool around. Hearing Bibidon's snort, Lu Yuan smiled and lowered his head to seal Bibidon's red lips. He hugged her tightly in his arms. He and Bibidon hadn't been intimate for a long time. He actually missed it very much. A long kiss dispelled all the grudges. When Lu Yuan let go of Bibidon's red lips, her face only had a faint blush and shyness. All the anger just now had already been thrown aside. Lu Yuan gently lowered his head and touched Bibidon's forehead. Their eyes met. He gently smelled the orchid fragrance on Bibidon's body and looked at Bibidon with a doting gaze. Dong-er. Lu Yuan softly called out and gently touched Bibidon's red lips. Bibidon didn't say anything. Her pink eyes stared at him in a daze. Lu Yuan smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't fool around, and I won't find a bunch of girlfriends in one go. No matter how many women I have, you will still be unique in my heart. You are their boss." Lu Yuan tapped Bibidon's nose and said with a smile. Bibidon blinked. She still didn't say anything, but she couldn't help but smile. Lu Yuan gently kissed Bibidon again. Then, he sat up straight. Bibidon quietly lay in his arms. Lu Yuan waved his hand, and a pure black god seed appeared in Lu Yuan's hand. It was so black that it didn't have any impurities. It was the evil god seed. He took the evil god seed and gently put it into Bibidon's head. He coldly said, "God position fusion." As Lu Yuan's words fell, Bibidong's aura suddenly skyrocketed. In just a moment, he broke through to the divine realm and was still climbing rapidly. Holy Spirit Qi, condense. There was another whisper. Endless Holy Spirit Qi quickly came. Under Lu Yuan's control, it quickly went into Bibidon's body. Combine and understand. When you wake up again, you will be the new evil god king. Lu Yuan spoke softly. He helped Bibidon close her eyes. Bibidon suddenly entered a deep meditative state. Boundless, pure, evil power quickly fused with Bibidong. With Lu Yuan's help, Bibidon would completely combine with the evil god seed. She would be able to use all of the evil god seed's power. Then, her power would be no weaker than the evil god king. Chapter 1220. In addition, Lu Yuan would also teach her some secret techniques, such as the secret character of Lin, and so on. In this way, her strength would even surpass the evil god king. Although Bibidon had never said it, Lu Yuan knew that when she saw Chihiro Snow and Jiu Yuana being so strong, she would always feel a little angry. After all, she was Lu Yuan's official wife, and she had an extremely strong personality. She would definitely feel uncomfortable if she fell behind Chihiro Snow and the others by so much. It was inevitable that she would feel remorseful. Therefore, now that the battle was over, the first thing he had to do was to raise her strength. Not to make her the strongest, but at least not too much weaker than Chihiro Snow and Jiu Yuana. Otherwise, if Bibidon continued to develop like this, her self-esteem would definitely be damaged. This was not something Lu Yuan wanted to see. Bibidon's foundation was very stable. Although they both came into contact with godhood inheritances when they were at the semi-divinity realm, Bibidon's foundation was even stronger than Chihiro Snow's. Not only did her strength reach the peak of the semi-divinity realm, but she also had a divine ring. This divine ring cemented her solid foundation, second only to Lu Yuan among the human soul masters. Now that she had inherited the deity position, her strength would be much stronger than Qian Runshue's. Although her martial soul was slightly weaker than Qian Runshue's, with her strong foundation, her strength would not be weaker than Qian Runshue's. Although they were both paramount godhoods, the evil God King had his own advantages as a veteran God King. Moreover, the evil godhood was extremely compatible with Bibidon. After fusing with it, Bibidon's strength would be at its peak. When Chihiro Snow and Bibidon fought, perhaps the one who would gain the upper hand in the end would be Bibidon. Of course, this was all based on the fact that Chihiro Snow only had a single divine throne. Moreover, this was only a possibility. The true battle situation was still uncertain. Perhaps the 12-winged angel god would have some powerful methods when breaking through to become a divine king. Lu Yuan still had Lucifer's fallen god king's godhead in his hands. He would purify it and remove the fallen energy, leaving only the dark, cold, and death energy. This way, he would obtain a brand new God King's godhead. He was going to give this quintessence to Chihiro Snow. After all, it was also an angel's quintessence, and giving it to Chihiro Snow might bring about some strange changes. Chihiro Snow's yin and yang complemented each other. When the two angel positions of light and darkness gathered in his body, it was possible that they would fuse together and become even more powerful. After all, she was Lu Yuan's first love. She was special. Therefore, Lu Yuan was naturally very considerate of Chihiro Snow. However, other than the evil God King, I can also arrange another divine throne for Dong-er. After all, he has twin martial souls. He can bear two divine thrones. I can't waste it. Moreover, since I've given Cher a cheat, Dong-er should follow as well. I don't want her to say that I'm biased in the future. Lu Yuan thought to himself as he looked at Bibidon. Among the remaining God King divine thrones, only the Azura divine throne is compatible with Dong-er. After all, Dong-er also has the Azura realm. However, the Azura divine throne is reserved for Nana. Therefore, I can only create a God King divine throne. Dong-er's martial souls are the Death Spider Emperor and the Soul-Devouring Spider Emperor. Originally, the Death God was quite suitable for her. However, the Death God is only a first-grade god, which is a little low. I might as well start with the Devouring aspect and create a divine throne of the Devouring God. It shouldn't be difficult for her to reach the God King realm. Lu Yuan muttered softly as he placed Bibidon, who was in a deep state of meditation, on the big bed that he had built. The power of devouring was definitely a high-level power. It wasn't much weaker than the power of order or the power of destruction. It was still very practical when one reached the God King realm. Moreover, the divine throne of the devouring god didn't exist in the God realm yet. It was just right for Lu Yuan to create it. You're really lucky. You even want me to create a divine throne for you. When you wake up, if you don't repay me properly, I'll definitely spank you. Lu Yuan gently tickled Bibidon's nose with a doting look in his eyes. After that, he stood up gently and let Bibidon comprehend the mysteries of the divine throne of the evil God King by himself. Meanwhile, he walked slowly towards Jiu Yuana. Since Chihiro Snow had already made proper arrangements for Bibidon, Jiu Yuana naturally couldn't be neglected. She was the first woman who was pregnant with his child. He definitely couldn't treat her badly. Seeing Lu Yuan walking towards her, Jiyu Yuana's purple eyes blinked gently. There was a gentle smile on her beautiful face. Everything is arranged? Jiyu Yuana asked gently. Yes, you're the only one left. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. He held Jiyu Yuana's hand and said softly, I'm the only one left. But I'm already a god king. What else do you want me to do? Jiyu Yuana blinked and asked in a slightly playful manner. I'll give you another divine throne. Although you control the power of creation of the dragon god and possess strength comparable to a god king, you don't actually have a true divine throne. The true complete divine throne is the dragon god's divine throne, but you can't inherit it, right? I'll give you a new one. Do you want the divine throne of kindness or the life goddess divine throne? Or do you want the divine throne of the spatial god? I can also help you elevate it to the god king realm. Lu Yuan smiled. The divine throne of the spatial god had extremely great potential for growth. The power of space was one of the highest levels of power, so elevating it to the god king realm would be no problem. Furthermore, the 3 divine thrones that Lu Yuan gave Jiyu Yuana were very suitable. Every single Jiyu Yuana would be able to unleash her full strength. Hearing Lu Yuan's question, Jiyu Yuana pursed her lips and asked with a smile, can't I have 2? I can only choose one. Sure, as long as you can absorb it. But greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Lu Yuan picked Jiyu Yuana up and sat down. He placed Jiyu Yuana on his lap and gently pinched Jiyu Yuana's cheeks as he said with a smile. I'm just joking. Oh, I want the divine throne of the spatial god. I'll leave the divine throne of kindness and the life goddess to your other women. I still prefer the power of space. Jiyu Yuana said with a smile. Okay, no problem at all. Then I'll take the divine throne of the spatial god. I'll elevate it to the god king realm. Lu Yuan said softly. With a casual wave of his hand, a divine throne that shone with silver light appeared in Lu Yuan's hand. It was the divine throne of the spatial god. Spatial power, condense. Lu Yuan let out a soft cry, and endless silver light emerged in the void. This was the purest power of the origin of space. If one wanted to elevate the level of the divine throne of the spatial god, this spatial power was a must. As the endless spatial power was poured into the divine throne of the spatial god, the divine throne slowly began to change. Chapter 12:21. The spatial godhead slowly filled up and became even more perfect and flawless. At the same time that it shone with a bright silver light, a faint layer of 9-colored halo began to slowly appear around the godhead. It was not difficult to upgrade the godhead, as long as the space origin divine power contained in the godhead became more profound and mysterious. In the end, the godhead was just a simple condensation of laws. In simple terms, if the space godhead that only involved some superficial use of the space origin divine power was a first-class godhead, then the god king godhead was a level higher. The space origin divine power contained in it became more mysterious and profound. Creating such a divine persona was obviously not too difficult for Lu Yuan. With his mastery of the power of rules, it was more than enough for him to do so. About 10 minutes later, with the infusion of endless space origin energy, the spatial divinity abruptly broke through the shackles and entered a higher level. The godhead transformed into a silver god seed, and the godhead that was nurtured by the space origin divine power also successfully reached the god king realm. At this moment, the godhead of the space god turned into the godhead of the space origin divine power. This was the godhead of the supreme god of the divine realm. The silver god seed was so gorgeous. The mysterious silver light flickered slightly, like a bright star, bright and deep. Lu Yuan played with it lightly. He could clearly feel that the space origin divine power contained in this god seed was more than 10 times more profound than the godhead of the space origin divine power. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Sure enough, the gap between the god king realm and the first-tier god was so big that it could not be measured. This could be seen from the godhead of the space origin divine power. Lu Yuan looked at the godhead of the space origin divine power in his hand for a while, then smiled and put it in Jiyu Yuana's hand. It's done. Jiyu Yuana looked at the godhead of the space origin divine power in her hand with some surprise and could not help but ask softly. Of course, how difficult did you think it was? Lu Yuan smiled lightly. It was just a matter of upgrading the godhead of the space origin divine power. It was not that difficult. I don't know how strong you are now. You are really unfathomable. I can't see through you at all. Jiyu Yuana was a little surprised. A God King level God seed was produced so easily. It didn't seem like it took much effort. Ibuchi was becoming more and more unfathomable. Jiyu Yuana thought to herself as she stroked Lu Yuan's face. Her beautiful purple eyes blinked gently, and there was a hint of infatuation in her gentle gaze. I can't say for sure how powerful I am. In any case, I don't dare to use my full strength right now. If I use just a little bit of my power, the entire God realm, along with the Douluo continent and other planes beneath it, will collapse. Lu Yuan smiled bitterly. After he became a god of laws, he had reached the heavens in a single bound. His strength had risen by a huge leap. It was true that with a flip of his palm, the stars would scatter, and with a flick of his finger, the galaxy would collapse. The fighting strength of the Douluo continent and the God realm was truly countless light-years away from him. The difference between heaven and earth was truly immeasurable. The Douluo continent was only at the planetary level, while he was at the cosmic level. If one had to ask him how powerful he was, he couldn't say for sure. This was because he didn't have a chance to unleash his full power, and no one could withstand a light flick of his finger. Back then, the God of creation had far surpassed the God King level. If there were realms above the God King level, such as the God Emperor level, then the God of creation would be at that level. However, even such a God of creation was crushed by Lu Yuan with a single finger. He couldn't resist at all. It was as simple as a giant dragon crushing an ant. Hence, there was no point in asking how powerful Lu Yuan was. In any case, he was very powerful, beyond imagination. At least, that was the case for Jiyu Yuana and the others. All right. Jiyu Yuana nodded slightly in response to Lu Yuan's answer. She was only asking casually. She knew that Lu Yuan's power had most likely reached an unfathomable level. She was very surprised, but at the same time, she was also very happy for Lu Yuan. Of course, there was also a hint of pride in her heart. After all, he was her man. Lu Yuan's heart stirred at the sight of Jiyu Yuana's adorable nod, and he gently pinched Jiyu Yuana's cheek before planting a kiss on her lips. Only after a series of intimate interactions did Lu Yuan release Jiyu Yuana's lips. He looked at Jiyu Yuana with an affectionate expression before grabbing her hand and placing the spatial divine seed in her glabella. Cultivate well and refine the divine seed, Lu Yuan said in a gentle voice as he gently kissed Jiyu Yuana's cheek. All right. Jiyu Yuana nodded and gave Lu Yuan a quick peck. She then found a place to sit down and began to meditate. A faint smile appeared on Lu Yuan's face as he waved his right hand, and a silvery white spear flew out of Jiyu Yuana's body. This was none other than her divine weapon, the silver dragon spear. He spread open his left hand slightly, and a streak of white light flashed out. This was a silver shuttle of light that was exuding bursts of spatial fluctuations. This was the divine weapon of one of the 7 elemental gods, the divine space shuttle, and it was a sovereign divine weapon. What Lu Yuan was going to do was undoubtedly fuse the divine space shuttle and the silver dragon spear together to forge a new super divine weapon. This super divine weapon was imbued with the power of the Silver Dragon King and spatial divine power, so it would be the most suitable weapon for Jiyu Yuana. As for the Dragon God's heart, that was the super divine weapon of the Dragon God, and it also contained the Dragon God's divine power. Even though Jiyu Yuana was currently using it, it was definitely going to be reserved for their child in the future, so Jiyu Yuana couldn't keep it forever. This was also the reason why he didn't let Jiyu Yuana absorb the Golden Dragon King. He wanted their child to inherit the Dragon God's deity position. He had already made the most suitable arrangements for the deity positions in his hands. He had already made up his mind about who would get what deity position. Under Lu Yuan's control, the Silver Dragon Spear and the Divine Space Shuttle slowly approached each other before colliding. These two divine weapons were quite compatible. Perhaps it was because Jiu Yuana also controlled the power of space, and even the Silver Dragon Spear was affected, but the repulsion between these two divine weapons wasn't strong. This made it even easier for Lu Yuan to operate the system. Lu Yuan's hands moved, and the power of creation began to evolve. Creation became creation, and then turned into annihilation. The power of creation was extremely mysterious, and it had the profundity of changes. The two divine weapons intertwined and slowly fused together. Lu Yuan waved his hand gently, and endless spatial origin power poured into it. The spatial origin power could increase the quality of a divine weapon. If he wanted to advance to a super divine weapon, just two divine weapons were definitely not enough. He also needed the help of a huge amount of spatial origin power. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.